Now this is a perfect cure for those off-season blues. The sights and sounds, hoots and hollers of a motorsports show. And every year, tens of thousands of fans flock to suburban Philadelphia for the biggest motorsports show in the northeastern United States, Miller Motorsports 98. Showcasing new sponsors, race cars by the ton, sanctioning bodies, racetracks, much, much more. You'll find just about anybody and everybody in Miller Motorsports 98, and the fans have a great opportunity to meet and greet their favorite drivers and look at their favorite race cars up close and personal. There's also one special star attraction in this event presented by the Area Auto Racing News newspaper. It's the Miss Motorsports pageant. This year, a record bevy of bathing beauties battled for the bequeathment of the Miss Motorsports crown. Translated into English, 36 lovely ladies competing for the chance to represent motorsports all across the Northeast and at all the Rush Hour on Dirt events this year. And what beauties they were this year indeed. From the starting field of 36, 12 finalists were selected. And this is when the competition got deadly serious, if you know what I mean. There's a lot more at stake than just the crown. There's plenty of cash prizes, potential endorsements. A lot rides on this. And the winner was the former Miss Dirt from 1997, Kimberly Whitehead, who was shocked and surprised to win her second pageant and only the third one that she had ever entered. Kim, of course, has racing in her blood. Her brother Chris campaigns in a modified at the Orange County Fair Speedway, and she's looking forward to going back on the road, something she dearly loves.
Hey, glad you could join us as we flip through the 1998 racing season with the Area Auto Racing News Year in Review. I'm Cowboy Paul Small, along with assistant editor for Area Auto, Kevin Kovac. We start the year at Daytona Speedway, specifically at Volusia Speedway Park during Speed Week.
Yeah, it was the first of 5 straight nights of all-star sprint action. Keith Kaufman got into the lead at the beginning of this race.
Later on, it was the 461, the famous brick wing machine of Lance Deweese, being chased down by the dude, Danny Lasowski. And after this pass coming off turn number 2, that night they were calling the dude the stud.
Lasowski was the stud in this whole deal. He won 3 of the 4 nights, and this was running the Chris Black car from Illinois.
And here's Danny the Dude in victory lane. A little further south at the East Bay Raceway, the Stars Late Models opened up their 1998 campaign.
This is the first of two nights of Stars action there, and then it was the Have a Temp race on Saturday night.
A little clamoring up in turn number 4 as a bunch of guys get together. And talk about get-togethers, we had a real head-to-head tilt for the lead that started after Keith Nosbich in the 02 grabbed the top spot. He was later joined by Steve Francis in the number 15. And Kevin, these guys seriously threw it down.
Side by side all the way around the 1/3 mile racetrack. And Nosbich, he knows how to run against these Stars guys. Last year he won a race in a Stars deal right at the beginning of the year, and this time he did it right again.
Francis says, "Excuse me," as they battle through traffic around turns 1 and 2, cranking it hard on the outside.
This is the top regular at the East Bay Raceway is Nosbich, and he showed it right here, going on the inside, and they side by side, but he kept pulling away, and he goes on to win.
Nice move there by Nosbich to get the Duke at East Bay. There's more than just dirt racing during Daytona Speed Week. New Smyrna hosts the World Series of Asphalt Racing. Modifieds take center stage.
At number 14, that's Teddy Christopher out of Connecticut. He's running the Bear Motorsports, number 14, and he was the man to beat in this whole series.
He had certainly more than a semi-charmed life while he was down in Florida. He won over 50% of the events that were contested at New Smyrna during Speed Week.
Exactly, 5 of the 7. This is his Tuesday night win in the number 14.
Sun, Stand, and Speed Weeks. Must be the Dirt Modifieds back in Florida at Volusia Speedway Park for 3 exciting races. The first night was a rematch of co-Mr. Dirt champions Brett Hearn in the Bud 3 and Danny Johnson in the number 6. And after this pick, roll, and box-out maneuver that would have made Kentucky coach Tubby Smith very proud, Hearn coasted on to victory in the first night of competition. Thursday night's Rush Hour and Dirt show started off with a bang. The Hearn was nowhere near it. He started third, led 47 of the 50 laps, and picked up his second consecutive victory. Saturday night, it was Doug Hoffman's turn to shine. First slipping past Upper Hills, Florida's Buzzy Rudiman, a Dirt Hall of Famer, and Briosky 0-0. Then it was a family affair as Hoffman slipped to the outside of brother Keith to take the lead. He went on to claim the victory in Saturday night's finale and celebrated with, yep, you guessed it, Billy Taylor. He's back. But the overall Florida Tour Championship went to the corporate jet, Brett Hearn.
The Isma Wing Super Modifieds were in action as part of Daytona Speedway as well on Volusia's asphalt track with the running of the Florida Winter Nationals. In the opening round of this second event, Paul Hosey's car catches fire. Joe Gosek gets caught up and winds up having to change a tire, but Kevin pulled the Classic back to front charge.
Joe showed you can pass on this asphalt track. It's a 3/8 of a mile paved oval. It's the asphalt track that used to be a dirt track. It started in 1993 as a dirt oval.
And the old asphalt track, the half mile, was converted back over to dirt this year. Now, the headline event for the Supers was their 50-lapper on Valentine's Day. And it was a good Valentine's Day present for Picky Rabosi, Joe Gosek's wife.
Yeah, Gosek, he went right back up to the front in this one, too. And nobody could beat him in the whole series.
Gosek's car working exceptionally well. Also putting up good performances, Randy Risky shown here, the number 37 machine that he drove for the duration of the 98 ISMA season. Gosek grabbing 2 of the 3 checkered flags in Florida. Russ Wood grabbed the 3rd checker on the opening night of competition for the Wing Supers. 10,000 beans on the line in the finale for Speed Week at East Bay. Well, let's rephrase that. 10,000 bucks.
Big dollars on the line for everybody. And it was Jim Neer in the number 00. He's an Ohio driver. He was in the lead for in the battle for the lead at the beginning of this race.
Amazingly enough, this 50-lapper went through with exactly 1 yellow flag.
First 43 laps of the race, caution-free. So that means it was a lot of lap traffic to get through. And the man that was getting through all of it was number 4J. Right there on the inside, it's Jeff Shepard out of Pennsylvania.
Pinching it down there on the bottom, working his way high and low, coming up behind you. That's Billy Pouch in that black Zemco number 1 machine. Shepard's car was working everywhere on the racetrack.
Here was the only caution of the races for Gary Wright, the Texas driver who dominated last year's All-Star races at East Bay.
There's Shepard working his way through on the final few laps, powering his way up there, looking for a little bit of cushion. Not having to worry. Smooth sailing on the way home, and 10 grand in Jeff Shepard's pocket for winning the finale of the Daytona Speedway competition. And there is Jeff in victory lane with one Dirt Hall of Famer by the name of Will Cagle. Now let's go northward, back up here to the northeast. February, Lincoln Speedway, and it was a warm day.
Oh, it was really, really warm, and actually was hot in the racetrack too. Right at the beginning of the race, here's Joey Allen flipping in the beginning of the heat race.
A most inauspicious start to the year for Joey Allen. Don't worry, there's more heaping helpings of upside down cake coming in this one.
Todd Schaefer jumped out into the lead in this one at number 88, but it didn't last very long because a red flag came out right in turn 3.
Watch what happens as the pack works around turn 2 and down the backstretch. Boom! Crash opera. We have a disaster on our hands, kids.
Danny Jones comes flipping into the end, and look at him right there.
Kind of stood his car up on the end, and you know what? The same thing happened to Fast Freddie Raymer as well. There's his car kind of standing up on its tail.
Raymer was knocked out of the race right at the beginning of this one in the opener, but he came back pretty strong. He won 33 races this year.
Back to Green Flag Racing. Todd Schaefer and that white number 88 machine on the point.
Shawn Michael in number 80. He was a rookie in the Carl Hards number 88. A great season for him, but he couldn't quite keep up with Todd Schaefer in the opener.
Michael, a graduate of the URC sprint car ranks, moving up to run with the Central Pennsylvania big boys in the 410 cars.
Jeff Shepard was again very hot, but he just couldn't keep up with Schaefer.
Schaefer working it down off the bottom of turn number 4 and collecting the first sprint car checkered flag on the tough Central PA sprint car scene. At Hagerstown Speedway, the late models are usually the center of attention. This was their Northeast Outdoor opener.
Yeah, that is a dirt track. It's a little bit of it's a perfectly smooth racetrack. Randy Grove does a great job for the drivers down at Hagerstown.
Yeah, looks can be deceiving. It is a dirt surface, and that is Marvin Winters with the Speedy Hayes number 44, holding off Gary Stuhler's number 19 in this one.
Winters joined Hayes last year, and he won right off the bat, and he won again here, 2 out of 3.
Now to the headquarters for Central Pennsylvania Sprint Car Racing, Williams Grove Speedway.
Traditional opener, Williams Grove. You can see the big crowd in the infield. It was a beautiful day at the beginning of March.
Jeff Shepard once again proving he was Mr. Hot Man in the early part of the season.
Shepard, every race he was up in the front of the field, but he could not win at the beginning.
That's Freddie Raymer in the number 77, dicing it down to the bottom at the end of the Groves drag strip straightaway, putting it on the bottom and taking the lead away with a little slide action off turn 4.
Raymer knew if he got up to the top of the racetrack, he'd be able to hold off Shepherd. He said that after the race.
Shepherd, though, did his best to keep Raymer honest, especially in traffic when they were both working on the outside. Shepherd trying to creep up and tiptoe around the top side. Didn't have enough room to do it there. Didn't have enough room to do it here either.
Raymer goes on with his first win of the year out of 33.
An incredible season for Freddie Raymer, but then again, he tends to have incredible seasons in sprint car racing. Now, the Modifieds play at Hagerstown on several occasions. This event from March the 1st.
Sort of a one-groove racetrack, definitely. Right around the inside. But Jeff Strunk had everybody covered in Keith Herring's number W9.
That's Doug Hoffman in the number 1, who was running in second. Emphasis on the word was. Kind of a sad story for Hoffman this year. Mechanical problems knocked him out of a bunch of races where he was in contention.
No one could keep up with Strunk. This was his first career big block win.
We're not used to seeing small block modifieds at Williams Grove, but they ran there this year.
Straightaways were a little bit long for small blocks. By about halfway down it, they were pretty much wound out. But here's Craig Von Dorn and Kenny Brightwell battling for the lead on a pretty much of a one-groove racetrack. There wasn't too much of an outside groove here.
Von Dorn is able to hold off Brightwell as they come screaming down the straightaway. And working his way through traffic, Von Dorn proves that sometimes you just got to get a little physical.
He bounced right over Donnie Rad's car. Kept going, though, and Brightwell couldn't get him, and Von Dorn won.
Good job by Von Dorn to maintain composure after running up over the front end of that race car.
Von Dorn just stayed right on the inside. He goes on to the win. This is his first win of 16 on the year. That was more than anybody else in small block competition in the Northeast.
Giving us the wave as it came across the line. The sprint car feature this particular afternoon had a little bit of controversial element to it, and it centered around this incident. Jeff Shepherd goes inside of Billy Pouch. Boom! Excuse me. Pouch almost grabs the fence major coming up in turn number 1.
And then a little bit later, there was a flip. There's the apple turnover, you can call this. Tim Schaefer rolling over. He causes a red flag, and Billy Pouch sort of lets Shepherd know about what he thought about that little accident in turn 1.
I think at this point, they were not planning to exchange Christmas cards.
Billy walked away right here, and after that, a little bit later, Shepherd goes on to win the race, and he also apologized to Pouch.
There's Billy walking away, having spoken his piece. Jeff getting ready to climb back in his race car and go on to eventually score the victory. Here's another look at the incident from our official dirt cam right in your living room.
Billy made a pretty good save on that.
Big Diamond Raceway, or since they expanded it a couple of years ago, Bigger Diamond Raceway.
Tangle right at the start of the race. Keith Hoffman in number 6 just made it out of that, but that's Terry Reimer getting a car up on top of his.
Back to green flag action, the battle up at the front of the field involving Dwayne Howard, but then another tangle.
Tough racetrack conditions at the beginning of the season.
Little contact there as Howard makes his way into the lead in the number 85 machine.
Howard goes on to win this race. He pretty much blew the field away after getting in front.
There's Howard taking the checkered flag at Diamond. Meanwhile, up in New England, the NASCAR Featherlane Modified Tour opened its season at the end of March on a beautiful day at Riverside Park.
There's Reggie Ruggiero. He took a provisional starting spot to get into this field. He came all the way from the back, and here he passes Mike Stefanik and Chris Kopech to go into the lead.
Just because it's a small quarter mile doesn't mean there isn't plenty of racing action. As a matter of fact, Stefanik would figure into this race in a slightly different manner than being in contention for the win, if you will. And it's centered around this incident with Teddy Christopher in the number 14. They're battling behind Ruggiero as they go into the corner. Teddy's car checks, and he takes Stefanik out with him in turn 2.
Stefanik keeps it going. He stands on the gas. When he comes around and gives us a peace of mind here to Christopher.
Meanwhile, Ruggiero had to hold off a couple of challenges. That's Stefanik coming back through the field, and as they come to the checkered flag, the place goes nuts because hometown hero Reg has gone from last to first. Booyah!
It was Reggie's first win with the new car owner, Tony Maffo.
East Windsor Speedway, where the wild things are. If you like your modifieds with sail panels and fuel and drag rubber and all sorts of fun stuff.
This is all-out racing, drag rubber, fuel-injected cars, and this was the season opener. And Joe Zuchek in the number 50 was the man to beat early.
And Doug Hoffman had a problem beating up the backstretch wall with his race car.
Zuchek might have thought he had an easy route to victory lane, but Kenny Brightwell made sure there was a little bit more to go.
Going into turns 1 and 2, Brightwell tries a move down low, then angles it off the second corner. He's going to go to the outside of Zuchek down the backstretch. Power move with authority. Mr. Brightwell in the lead, and Zuchek parks it in the fence.
Zuchek said he wasn't psyched out by Brightbill. He said that there was a little valve spring problem in his car. He was driving into the turns a little bit more, a little harder than he had to.
Trying to keep the horsepower up, but Brightbill got to victory lane first at Windsor. Back to Williams Grove, some more sprint car action.
The Early Bird Championship, and there's Sean Keane smacking the wall early in the night.
Fortunately, he didn't go over. One guy did come over, though, to play. Stevie Smith going to make it a return with the Ingersoll Ram car.
He had a night off from the Outlaws, and he only lives about 45 minutes away from Williams Grove, so he made a little stop in for the night.
Working it hard with Lance Deweese. Now that's Jeff Shepard's number 4 slowing. Something came up into the driver's cockpit and got him in the right foot and leg.
The ambulance had to make a little stop over to Shepard and checked him out, but he was all right.
Back to racing. Fast Freddie Raymer on the point in the 77, and here comes Stevie Smith, and there goes Stevie Smith.
You could say maybe Raymer would have had 34 wins this year if Smith didn't stop in for a night.
And there's the senior and junior members of the Smith family. The ARDC Midgets opened their season at the Silver Spring Speedway.
It's one of the historic organizations in the Northeast, and this was the beginning of their year.
Everybody trying to steer their way clear of a slower competitor there at the start of the race. Walt Sturley, the big story in this one.
Yeah, he pretty much dominated the event. After he passed Ray Bull on lap 11, there was no catching Sturley.
Sturley going at the distance, going for speed, and grabbing the ARDC win in the first round of competition for them. The Silver Spring is traditionally home to the Super Sportsman, a super competitive division.
There's probably no better division in the Northeast. They have starters in these cars. They're no power steering, too, which makes running them very difficult.
But it wasn't difficult for Howie Locke in the number 12. Heck, Howie made the whole season at Silver Spring look pretty easy.
He won this race, flag-to-flag effort, and he goes on to win the championship at the track, his 6th of his career.
Grandview Speedway and their season opener, where the small blocks play on Saturday nights, and sometimes they play a little rough.
Yeah, a little bit physical right at the beginning of this race.
That's Dwayne Howard's number 85 that was falling apart there.
Steve Folk rolls it over. He jumps out, though. He's uninjured.
It's Craig Von Dorn in the number 114 that's showing everybody the fast way around opening night at Grandview as he puts a checker in his pocket. New Egypt Speedway, and we mean New Egypt Speedway.
It used to be an asphalt track, but the Grasso family of New Jersey purchased it, spent over $1 million renovating it. It became a third-mile dirt track.
And one of the classiest-looking facilities anywhere in the Northeast. And they had a pretty classy field opening night that was dominated by the Tabloid Graphics number 19 machine, Eddie Brightbill.
He won it. It was the beginning of a perfect season there. If he wouldn't have skipped a couple races, he would have won the championship.
Grandview Speedway and Tom Mayberry. That, my friends, is going to leave a mark.
This kind of runs up against the boilerplate, but here's Kevin Hart and Norm Hansel's number 357. He took the lead at the beginning. He looked like he was headed toward an easy win. But right here, he has a little bit of a problem.
Ooh, can he hang on to it? I don't think so. And that set up a spectacular battle at the end.
Randy Bailey in the lead there. Ray Swinehart right behind him. But the last lap was a good shootout, and it became one of the all-time finishes at Grandview.
Now watch this. Coming into turns 3 and 4, they're going for the checker. Side by side. You make the call when they cross the line. You know what? The officials couldn't. They declared it a tie.
Apparently that was the first one ever at Grandview.
It was Jay Castamore's maiden voyage as general manager of the Orange County Fair Speedway in Middletown. Packed house, packed pit area, but there was one team that was notably missing from the festivities. Dr. J, Danny Johnson, who's been an absolute terror on the hard clay at Middletown for the past several seasons. Most recently was last year's Syracuse Superhero, as well as co-Mr. Dirt champion, was not in the Freightliner car number 6. Danny was there, but didn't have a ride. He spent the evening trying to get one and wound up not even making the show. And to the big dance we go. The first feature event of the year on the hard clay for the big blocks. Frank Cozy, who had an eye operation in the offseason, is your early race leader, chased by the Kensington Manor 10 of Rich Urich and a bunch of other top guns trying to work their way up through the field. Urich dives down to the inside here, trying to get the lead away from Cozy, gets the bite he needs off the inside of the second corner, and eventually outdrags Cozy for the lead. Urich was able to fend off all challenges to grab the opening night win. A great run for the Kensington Manor car, and a great opening night for rookie general manager Jay Castamore.
358 opener at Orange County, and Andy Bicchetti working it on the outside, throwing it up there on the cushion. Hang on to it, baby.
He put it up there the entire race and went right to the front. You're not supposed to be able to do that at Orange County.
The only time he bothered to go low was when Jack Johnson went upstairs sliding up the racetrack. Bichetti says, "See ya," going down the backstretch. That's no contest win for Bichetti in night number 1 in Middletown 358 action. It started as a typical night of exciting racing at Lebanon Valley. Former track champion Kenny Tremont in the 115 mixing it up mid-pack, and then Donnie Ackner and Maynard Ferret get together on the front stretch to bring out a yellow. That brings about a restart, and what would happen next was simply amazing. John Stanley has the call.
Green flag is out and we're underway. Dixie Larkin once again goes to work at the head of the field. Now Donnie Carolus is right there with him. Billy Decker on the inside. Kenny Tremont moving down to the inside. They shuffle Don Ackner out of it. Tony Tornabine back up to the top 5, and Rich Ricky Jr. charging down the back straightaway.
No, you're not seeing things. Look again. Jason Goff in the number 73 car is at the back of the field. He tags the back of Brett Hearn's Budweiser 3, then bounces off Dave Leckenby's 1 car. The car goes into a violent set of rolls, and he takes out the lights. Literally, I can hear somebody rewriting that Vicki Lawrence song now. Look at it one more time and you'll see how the right front wheel of Goff's car collapsed, sending him into this violent set of barrel rolls. He rode on top of the infield wall in the backstretch, and that catapulted the car up into the air and into a power pole. Not only did the lights go out, the power went out everywhere around the racetrack. Nobody was hurt when the lights went out, but needless to say, this feature event was stopped. X marks the spot. After many years, Figure 8 racing made a regular return to Riverside Park Speedway in Massachusetts. What draws fans to Figure 8 racing? That's right, connections at the X. But there was something else on this bill. The first ever visit of the Isthmus Supermodifieds to the Riverside Park Oval.
Quarter-mile racetrack, but they fly around it with the high banks. You can see the wings going down on the corners.
Those are those hydraulic wings that are affected by the air pressure. Early race leader was Scott Martell on the Total Seal number 14, being hounded by Mike Ordway, part of the potent Team Dunnigan stable. Ordway gets the lead from Martell, but as the race moves into traffic, there's an incident that would change the outcome of the race somewhat. That's when Mike Ordway did this 180 to avoid the 97 of Howie Lane and Dave Smart's number 27. Under ISMA rules, if you spin to avoid, you get your spot back. So Ordway got the lead back and wound up winning the race.
We head to the Black Rock Speedway in the Finger Lakes region of New York for the Empire Super Sprints.
And one heck of a battle up at the front of the field between former ESS champion Mike Woodring in the number 19 machine and Bobby Perro in that Parts Plus number 9. These guys had a wicked dogfight.
Side by side all the way around the racetrack. Woodring began his great season in ESS competition with this race.
Perro trying it again and again. He's like the Energizer battery, he just keeps going and going and going. The only problem is Woodring's still in front of him every time he goes. No matter what Perro tried, and he tried every trick in the book inside and outside, Woodring was able to hold him up and bring home the checker in this early event on the ESS schedule. Port Royal Speedway, ARDC midgets, buckle your seatbelts, it's speed shot time.
It's a horrible wreck. Gary Halterman catches a rut, flips, and is rammed by Ted Schmidt.
Wow.
No injuries, fortunately, in this accident.
You can see what was left of both of the race cars that were involved in this incident. Look at that. Wow.
I don't think he was going to be running out the rest of the night.
But the guy who did run the rest of the night wound up winning was
Ed Steinley Jr., one of the young guns and upcoming stars in ARDC.
Down to Winchester Speedway in Virginia for some Stars late modelage.
I put Gary Stuhler on the pole for this one, so that pretty much told you the story. You weren't going to catch him.
You cannot stop Stuhler. You can only hope to contain him on restarts and hope to get around him. Not happening.
That's Bob South. He's spinning around in the action.
He gets his car righted back around. Stuhler is still on the point and stays there the entire race.
Stuhler is known as a perfectly smooth race car driver. He just tiptoes around the outside and goes on to win his first of several Stars races this year.
New racetrack, New Egypt Speedway, new class of cars running in New Egypt. URC making an appearance.
Action started off right at the beginning. In warm-ups, there's Jeff Thomas flipping.
Spider Thomas getting leggy with it up there on the outside of turns 3 and 4. Unique shape to this New Egypt racetrack, Kevin.
It's a small one, so the sprint cars, it's almost perfect for sprint cars if they can really get going, and it's a really tacky racetrack also. And Greg Coverdale went on for the win.
Here's another track with a unique configuration, the Square Speedway, known as Flemington.
And they all pile in the late models into the foam.
Is it over yet? Is it over yet? Okay, now it's over.
There were some late models left to run the feature, and they got off to a good start.
Jimmy Wismer in the blue number 7 starting deep in the pack, as you can see, working through the first and second turns of this distinct 4-turn racetrack. Gets the lead here with this nifty move.
And he comes right up into the lead, and he takes the win in the season opener.
Wismer in that beautiful number 7 machine. There are more than late models to racing in Flemington. As a matter of fact, the Tar Cars are now going to be a weekly division in 1999, a headliner, if you will.
This was the new division in 1998 there. It's sort of a small block division, a little bit less money involved in running it. And Steve Witt in the number 11, the bright car there, he was the dominant force in this, and he avoided this little near spin to keep the lead and go on to the win in the first race for the Tar Cars.
There he is doing it to it on the inside of the racetrack. He won a whole bunch of races in this Tar Car class at Flemington. Now, the full-up modifieds did compete at Flemington. They will compete again in 1999 in selected events.
Flemington promoter Paul Cole originally had said there weren't going to be any events, but the modified drivers kind of banded together, and they got cool to give them 8 events this year.
Now, this crash at the opening of the feature event happened just before the rains came, so this one was a wash.
They ran it the week after.
Evergreen Speedway in round 1 of the Sunoco Race of Champions Modified Qualifying Tour, formerly the New York State Modified Championship Series.
There was a little bit of beauty around the racetrack there in that day.
And some beastliness as well.
Into the turn 1 wall.
George Kent, the Duke of Kent, the number 26 machine, leading this one pretty much flag to flag. Chuck Hospital in the number 22 there getting a little contact with the wall.
There was no catching Kent, though. He goes on to the win over his son, JR.
Wall Stadium in New Jersey, the track that looks like a bicycle velodrome and the way it's banked.
High banks, you can see them going way up it, and they smash and crash and keep going.
But if you thought that was smashing, wait till you see this one that's coming up. Now check this out, side-by-side battle coming up through turns 3 and 4, and all of a sudden, here it comes. Watch careful now.
J.R. Helberg gets shoved into the wall, rolls over, and he's not really helped out by the track crew. They didn't exactly, weren't very nice with the car.
So much for a soft roll.
And Eddie Bone goes on to his 2nd straight victory.
Now the ATQ MRA version of the 3/4 midgets that are based down in New Jersey are going to run several events at Wall.
They fly around the little racetrack, and Mike Tittenbach is the superstar in this division. He goes on to the win.
ARDC midgets getting to try out the new Egypt clay.
Very bumpy in the corner there. You can see the midgets kind of jumping around in the corners, but they adapted pretty well.
And it was Tim Dietz in the number 86 machine that did the best job of adapting. He adapted his way to the checkered flag.
It was a close finish, though. He just barely beat Ed Steinle.
Outlaws at Williams Grove, and Slammin' Sammy is doing the slam dance on the front stretch. Ouch, baby.
Preliminary night for the Outlaws, and there was a bunch of flips. There's Brooke Tatnell, Australian, tangling with Johnny Mackison and rolling over.
And here's Billy the Kid Pouch going for the new all-time altitude record at the Grove.
When he came down, it was really hard, and he broke his right kneecap, shattered it.
You can see the car bicycling, and once you get to that point, hang on, you're going for a ride.
This accident put Pouch out for almost 3 months.
You can see Billy was in obvious pain when they got him out of the race car. Now on to the racing itself. This one was a pretty wild affair.
Right from the start of the race, it was Lance Deweese getting out into the lead. You could see Johnny Herrera was the man on the move.
Johnny, the Terra Herrera, going down to the inside in turns 1 and 2 and pulling the classic slide job sprint car pass. Kevin Gobrecht and Dale Blaney say hello.
They roll over in the middle of the race. Lance Blevins also involved.
Here comes Mark Kinzer sneaking up on the inside, squeezes Herrera so tight it was almost like popping a zip.
It wasn't a great season for Mark. He didn't win as many as he had in the last couple of years, but it got off to a good start here in Williams Grove in the Eastern Swing.
Kinzer completes the pass on Johnny Herrera, and even though Herrera tries to come back, there ain't no beating Mark on this night. He's getting himself a win.
Normally, I'm not very good at running the bottom. I'd rather get up there and throw some rooster tails, but the crew chief said that's our plan, and that's what we went with.
Drivers honored at this year's ceremony included the Pink Panther, Chuck Akulis, who raced in 4 decades with 54 feature wins at 5 Mile Point alone. Lebanon Valley standout Tommy Top Cat Corellis was also honored for his 5 decades of racing. A posthumous Pioneer Award was given in honor of the late Jim Hurtubise, who began and ended his winning career racing modifieds on now third-sanctioned tracks. The Gene DeWitt Car Owner Award was handed to the Higbee brothers for their long-time excellence as modified team owners. Dr. Dick Berggren, who had a long-standing TV commitment, was honored for his print and broadcast excellence with the Leonard J. Salmons Memorial Award. And the first Mechanic of the Year award was given to crew chief Charlie DeAngelis. He's been to victory lane 4 times at Syracuse with 3 different drivers.
The Hall of Fame Championship event on the high banks and headquarters of the dirt circuit, the Cayuga County Fair Speedway. Danny Johnson in the Thumb Racing 12 team, Barefoot Bob McCready in the number 9, and there's the number 115 of Kenny Tremont. Now, 2 of these 3 are going to get involved in a little fracas, and it's Tremont and Danny. They're trading jabs here, and then finally Danny throws a mean hook, if you will.
Danny just spins Tremont right out, and Tremont didn't exactly accept this too nicely.
Okay, Danny, we heard your opening statement. How about a rebuttal, Kenny?
Kenny smashes him, and for that, he gets a black flag. It was a little bit of a new attitude for Kenny this year. He wasn't taking anything on the racetrack, and it was also his second run-in with Danny this year.
Now on to the actual race itself, and this was a good one. Gary Tompkins in the Bill Trot 84, AJ Slideways, Alan Johnson, the 14J, doing the slick track dance.
And Gary edges out Alan for the biggest win of his career.
Can-Am Speedway, the annual summer starter.
There were definitely 2 grooves in this racetrack, you can see. Here's Timmy McCready on the inside, Pat Ward on the outside. They ran this way pretty much the entire 33 laps. Everybody was standing on their feet.
Ward will run on the outside, picked up a Tio Pro car to run this season, and boy did he, the car, and the team all click in combination this year. Look at this major league save by Ward, almost losing it on the outside.
Timmy stayed to the inside the entire time, did not make a mistake at his home track, and he goes on for the win.
That was the biggest big block win today for Tim McCready. Now we'll go back to Williams Grove for night number 2 of the Outlaws in competition.
Stevie Smith, he had a bad night the first week of the Outlaw Tour. He had a blown motor at Williams Grove. This time, he made up for it.
Slamming Sammy Schwindel in the blue channel lock number 1, working it as he comes through traffic. But there goes Stevie Smith. Boy, he just ambushes people, doesn't he?
This was early in the race, and after that, Stevie was gone.
Or so everybody thought. While Sammy was trying to keep up, here came Mark Kinzer. Now you want to talk about a power-moving 2-bagger. Look at this. First by Sammy, and in the same corner, say bye to the Wild Child.
Mark might have been the fastest car at the end, but it was a little bit too late.
Stevie working it off turn number 4. Even though he taps the fence, he still gets the win.
Well, we were racing hard. I didn't know how close they were behind me. I figured Sammy was right there with me or Mark, so I was trying to run a fast pace, but the lap cars were there, and I was having a hard time making a nice corner, so I just fouled up. But we ended up here in the Ingersoll Rand car in victory lane. That's all that matters.
Back to the Flemington Speedway for a double dip of modified Thunder.
John Blewett III and Dick Barney, number 14. This was one of his best nights of the year. He swept a double feature program.
Able to avoid incidents like this little slide up over in turn number 2. Blewett takes home the win in one race, comes back later on for the back half of the Twin Bill.
It wasn't the best year of his career this time. He didn't win a championship at Flemington. He was upset by Pete Britton.
As a matter of fact, that was Pete Britton that was chasing Blewett across the line at the end of the first feature. Second feature had a little sparkle and flair to it, courtesy of this wreck up in turn number 1. But there was no contest for Blewett. He went on to win this one. Now this is something. This is the finish of the ARDC midget race that night, Kevin.
It's Rudy Boddicker and Gary Halteman going across the line. Boddicker wins the race, but here's the camera.
Look at this, tangling hard into the foam in turn number 1.
Boddicker wins the race, walks the victory lane, has a broken right arm. Had to go to the hospital after victory lane ceremonies.
The Wild Child living up to his name when the Outlaws were at Lebanon Valley, New York. This crash happened during time trials. Not only did it knock Haught out of the race car for a couple of nights, but shortly after this incident, crew chief Guy Forbrook left the Pennzoil team.
The race boiled down to Steve Kinzer and Mark Kinzer, the cousins, and it was Mark who was the man.
Steve knew he was going to have to make his move early. He tried it on the outside of the front stretch at the start of the feature. no dice there. So he was left to battle behind Mark with Sammy Swindell. They had a pretty good tussle going for the second and third positions. And check out this move by Sammy going into turn number 1. Hello, I think I'll just grab a handful of infield to make my pass.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do at Lebanon Valley. It's not exactly an easy place to pass at. And Mark Kinzer didn't have to worry about it. He crossed the checker flag easy.
Modifieds always run a support show at the Outlaws. It was not a good night for Brett Hearn. First, this tangle up and Johnny Hewitt and Rich Rickey come together. It could have been a lot worse on the backstretch. Going into turn 1 on this restart, Brett has more of a problem. Something breaks in the front end, right into the first turn wall. Shoot! This bud's for you, Hearn haters. That was just one of several incidents this year Brett had at Lebanon Valley. Kind of slowed his season down. There was no slowing down Kenny Tremont, though. Going on the inside of Donnie Corrales with his Troyer experimental car. And as always, victory lane for Kenny is a family affair. The second half of the Outlaws New York Super Swing starts on the fast track Rolling Wheels Raceway with another capacity crowd. And Mark Kinzer, believe it or not, he wasn't even a factor in this race. No, that's shocking. Johnny Herrera in the number 47 was the race leader from the drop of the green, chased down by Andy Hillenberg from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma in the black number 2. 2 laps to go, and Hillenberg gets wicked on the inside of turn number 2. What a move, and you think that was good? Watch this. Splits a lap car with Herrera. That gives Hillenberg the lead for good with 2 to go, and a great win for an unsponsored driver. When the Outlaws come to play, the Modifieds get to stay, run a feature event of their own. This 25-lapper was particularly kind to one Pat Ward. First off, he immediately grounded the Jet Brett Hearn and his Budweiser Bullet number 3 machine. If Hearn's car was a bullet, Ward's car was a supersonic missile. He closed in on Dr. J. Danny Johnson. This was the battle for the lead, and the crowd was getting jiggy with it, and so was Ward. He got it. Taking care of the doctor on the backstretch. Danny sulked for a while in the second spot, tried to come back on the outside, but Ward with a little flick of the wrist and a trample of the foot on the accelerator says, see ya to the doctor. It's just like the Giants at 59. Ward wins the wheels! Ward wins the wheels!
I'll tell you, I've been coming here for 25 years, and I've been close 3 or 4 times, but it feels great.
The following night, the teams went to the land of legends. Stevie Smith doing his best wheel standoff turn number 2, followed by I can't even do the math on this. It's like 3.5 spins, and he didn't get the car back. The battle up front, surprise, surprise, again. Danny Lasowski and the Beef Packers 83 takes the lead from Dale Blendon with 4 laps to go. Where's the beef? Lasowski definitely had it Thursday night as he scored the ending win. West Virginia Motor Speedway, beautiful place with hillside seating and late models in the house.
This was the first race of the year at West Virginia, which has been having some financial problems the last couple of years. It opened up for a twin bill of stars action.
Gary Stuhler in the number 19, snaking it on the inside of turn number 4. Who says late models can't slice and dice and make Julian fries?
Big 5/8 mile racetrack, big high banks. Gary Stuhler wins the first one and picks a number 4 inversion for the second.
And it turns out to be the number 3rd. The top 4 cars are inverted.
Stuhler didn't lead the whole second race. Todd Andrews got out to the first spot at the beginning of the event.
But then Andrews made contact with the wall outside of turn number 2, and that handed the lead battle over into Stuhler's hands.
He passes Donnie Moran with a nice inside move and then goes on to the win.
And it's not easy to pass Donnie Moran. The guy wins tons of late model races everywhere. Opening round of the Skoll 358 series in Orange County. Big field of cars and a big controversy in this race.
And guess what? That controversy didn't involve Danny Johnson, who was back in the Freightliner or RJD trucks number 6.
Brett Hearn knocked out of this one after contact with the wall up in turn number 2. This is where the controversy comes in. Doug Hoffman is leading the race. Running in second is Pete Bicknell. Bicknell goes for the inside in turn number 3. They make contact, or do they? And Hoffman goes around. And it's not over yet for Hoffman because the rest of the field is literally piling in.
Bicknell thought it was a racing accident, but the officials didn't agree. They put him to the rear for the restart. Here he goes.
Obviously, Pete was not happy about it. Andy Bicchetti, by the way, in the 57 there, started this race and last after failing to go to the scales and wound up 4th. But Kenny Tremont was the star of the show, getting the checkered flag.
Here he is with Kim Whitehead, Miss Motorsports 98.
Opening round of the Skoll Bandit Racing Series for 98 at Susquehanna Speedway in Pennsylvania. Danny Johnson had started the year in the RJD Trucks number 6 machine, then swapped around to a couple of rides, and then wound up back in the ride at the start of the Skull Series to resume his battle with his fellow Mr. Dirt champion from last year, Brett the Jet.
This time, Brett would get the upper hand, although it was pretty close. This is the last lap of the race. Danny gets on the inside, but just doesn't have enough.
Hearn goes on to get the win, an all-important first bragging race on the Skull Bandit Racing Super Dirt Series. Now, the following night, the teams went to the New Egypt Speedway in New Jersey to make a first-ever visit there for a Skull Show, and they wound up racing more against the racetrack than they did each other.
Track, it's a very tacky racetrack, and it came up very, very rough, unusually rough. And the car's bouncing around. Here's Bob McCready, I guess, testing out his new back, right?
Exactly, and here is Bobby Barron testing out his front end and finding that it fails miserably when it's been pounded into submission. Doug Hoffman also getting involved there, although Hoffman will come back and try to pose some kind of a challenge in this race. Barefoot Bob, coming off successful back surgery over the winter, came home with his first win on the Skull Series in '98. He backed that up with another one. Afton Raceway, Friday night NASCAR Winston Racing Series action for 358s in New York State. And this track is actually built on the inside of a half-mile horse oval.
It's a tight little racetrack, and there's some, it shows you right there.
Paul Jensen of the number 57 barely avoiding contact in that pileup, working the outside of Jeremy Smith's number 46 machine, and he'll take the lead and the win on this particular Friday night of competition at the Afton Raceway Park. I believe Jensen was also the track champion this year at the Afton facility.
And he came very close to winning a regional title in a NASCAR Winston Racing Series.
Now back to the Dirt Series, or the Skull Series specifically, the Cornwall Motor Speedway, a tight quarter-mile racetrack where there's plenty of horsepower and plenty of elbowing. Billy Decker gets hip checked by Danny Johnson.
Early in the race, that happened. Decker broke a left rear radius rod, but he continued on in the race, and he ended up finishing third.
There's Barefoot Bob McCready, the Kenny Drugstore's car number 9, working it on this Father's Day. He goes around his son Tim McCready with a power move on the outside. Son, that's the way we pass.
I think Bob knows how to get around these little racetracks. He was born and bred on them in the North Country.
McCready comes home with his second checkered flag in a row on the Skull Bandit Racing Super Dirt Series track. He wouldn't get another one on the Skull Series for the rest of the year. Fonda Speedway, more Skull competition, more Brett the Jet. The Bud Blaster is in effect.
But Brett didn't have it easy because another TO Pro car, Pat Ward, was the man until he got a flat tire.
Ward drops off the pace. Meanwhile, Kenny Tremont makes a challenge and actually gets by Hearn for a moment or two.
But Brett lost a cylinder late in the race, and that kind of helped him out. The track got slicker, Brett got faster.
Sometimes you don't have to go fast to go fast, if you know what I mean. Brett the Jet scores the win at Fonda. The Skull Series continues in Western Pennsylvania at Tri-City Speedway, and with the help of Pennzoil, some extra bucks on the line. 10,000 big ones to the winner of this show.
This race was run on a regular Sunday night at the racetrack. That's the track's regular night of racing. Here's Frank Cozy and Kenny Breitbel getting together. Breitbel doesn't hit the wall, though.
Came awfully darn close. Steve Batra in the number 31, battling up on the outside in turns 1 and 2, wound up coming home with the Syracuse qualifying spot that got him into the Eckerd 300 at Dirt Week. Bob McCready and Kenny Tremont, they had strong runs too, but it was Brett the Jet avenging his flat tire that cost him the race here last year to come away with the $10,000 payday.
He shot off some fireworks in Victory Lane, putting on a show.
There were fireworks of a different kind at the Lernerville Speedway the following night. This race was a classic.
On a tacky racetrack, Danny Johnson and Craig Von Dorn ended up battling hard.
Now look at this. It seems like Danny's standing still. Craig goes to the inside and goes, "See ya later. I'm out of here, baby."
Danny comes right back on the inside in lap traffic, but Von Dorn holds him off for the moment on the outside.
Danny, though, is a master of being able to put a car anywhere he wants to, whenever he wants to. Knew the bottom lane was good, waited for the right time and the right opportunity, snuck it to the inside, and took the lead. Von Dorn kept trying to battle back, and these two swapped it back and forth again a couple of more times, except Mother Nature stepped in and said, you're not going to be able to finish this one because I'm going to make it rain. So Danny was declared the winner. Berwyn Speedway, the D-shaped Dirt Demon, and the Skull Series for the 358 modifieds, continuing with a little brotherly love. Yeah, I don't think so.
Danny goes flying out, and Allen goes on the inside, takes the lead.
Danny in his own 27J, Allen in the Maroni number 14J. Late in the race, Danny facing a challenge from Dale Plank in the number 77 X Machine. Plank, a three-time NASCAR Winston Racing Series champion. Boom! Plank goes over the lap car Roger Phelps 3 laps from the end, and his brilliant drive comes to a close.
Dale was knocked out momentarily in that, but he was uninjured, and then Allen went to the checkered flag.
Pennsylvania Sprint Car Speed Week speed shot in your face. Boom! Big up sprint cars at Silver Spring.
In this race, another battle between Jeff Shepard and Fred Raymer. They went at it, tooth and nail, long time.
Raymer on the point. Shepard going to the outside, cranking the elevator up to the top floor. Is he going to get him? Yep.
But then Raymer will try to do the same thing, and he'll go up on the inside and try to get Jeff.
Working down the backstretch. There's Shepard. Where's Freddie? There's Freddie. And there goes Freddie. Slide job. The oldest moving sprint car racing. It works.
Freddie keeps on going, but Shepard didn't exactly give up.
Raymer tiptoeing through the tulips on the outside, keeping the car off the fence, which he did the rest of the way to get the checkered flag at Silver Spring.
He can drive the top of the racetrack, and he gets his car going real good, and we got the screwing around on the bottom, and he drove by, and I figured I better get my ass in gear, and we got up there, and
I wagered to say the rest of it was pretty much in gear, too. And speaking of being in gear, let's set up the scenario for this Skull Race at the Rolling Wheels Raceway. Coming into the night, Danny Johnson quit the RJD Trucks ride. Bill Trout, who owns Gary Tompkins' car, offered Danny the backup car. That's Danny passing Gary. That's Danny passing Brett. And by the way, Kevin, he's coming from dead last in the field doing all of this.
It's on the 97th lap, too. It's probably the most amazing story of the entire season.
Danny sneaks up underneath Brett the Jet, the race leader, squeaks by with a lap to go. He's got the lead. Can he hang on? It's Dr. J. You better believe he's going to hang on. Last to first in a car he had never driven before. And I tell you what, this crowd was pumped, and so was the doctor.
You would have thought he won Syracuse. I think he was actually more excited than when he won Syracuse last year.
Easily the race of the year on the dirt circuit. The Moody Mile. The teams go there to run under the lights in July on the Skull Bandit Super Dirt Series. And bug chaser Billy Decker was getting ready for a Syracuse assault in October by starting with a dominating performance in July.
The mile track did its job on motors, too. That was Jeff Hetzler blowing one up into turn one. And moments later, Joe Plazik also did one himself.
And neither of these two drivers would be seen in October at Super Dirt Week. Billy Decker would, but we'll get to that later on in the year. In the meantime, Billy making a command performance to capture the July event at the Moody Mile. Now, the sportsman cars run in addition to the modifieds on this July Racing Spectacular, Bill. Vince Vitale in the number 56 machine, putting it on cruise control at the front of the field, leading Steve Hall's number 61 down to the checkered flag. Vitale grabs the win in this Firecracker Sportsman Championship and celebrates it with a roof dance of sorts. Little Valley Speedway, the Cattaraugus County Fairgrounds in New York State. This is one track with some seriously long straightaways.
And some tight turns. Look at the little tiny tight radius of the racetrack.
This is the Empire Super Sprint Club and one of their 2 appearances of the year at Little Valley. Mike Woodring in the 19. Notice the vapor trails coming off the wing of that sprint cars that went down the straightaway. Pretty humid night.
And Woodring goes on to the win. It was his 4th straight and 7th in 10 starts in the ESS competition.
Back to Big Diamond for some more Pennsylvania small block modified racing action. Now here's a slam dunk for you. Release rotation, splash.
Don't mess with the tractor tire in the infield.
Some more action in mid-pack. I tell you what, Big Diamond's got some great competitive racing. You don't believe me? Look at this. 4 wide.
Dwayne Howard right on the inside. He gets shut off in that deal.
Back down off turn number 4. Battle for the leads going down.
Kyle Weiss takes the lead. He's an upstart in the Pennsylvania modified action.
Meanwhile, a little bit further back now on a restart, there's a little tanglage on the front stretch, and we have crashage.
Mimi DeSantis is in the middle of that, and also Keith Hoffman. And then there's Glenn Strunk and Bobby Trapper.
And there's Kyle Weiss, hand up in the air, victory lane, and Big Diamond been very, very good to him.
The action continued in the second, the nightcap of the Twin 20s, and this was Keith Hoffman, who had this race in his back pocket.
Keith really came on strong in Pennsylvania small block modified competition this year in this number 6 machine, getting the congrats down in victory lane. Let's go back to Lincoln Speedway for some more sprint cars.
This is the next to last race of the Pennsylvania Sprint Speed Week deal. And Freddie Raymer was going for his 11th straight Lincoln win, but it wasn't easy.
That was Tim Schaefer in the number 12, the famous Apple machine, doing battle. Here comes Jeff Shepard on the outside. They're really throwing it down in this one. Shepard's car a little bit off the pace now, going into turns 1 and 2. Schaefer hits the wall. Shepard hits Schaefer. There's flames, there's cars crashing, and we got us a mess.
And that pretty much saved Raymer because Schaefer and Shepard were coming right up on him, but he goes on to his 11th straight win, and they beat his triplets in victory lane.
Next stop on our tour is the Grandview Speedway. The Firecracker 40 for late models was on the bill, but there was some wild action with the modifieds too. Look out!
Double flip on the backstretch, no injuries.
And if you thought that one was spectacular, look at this tail twister with the 3.5 gainer. Gets a 9.5 from the Russian judge.
The main event of the night was the Firecracker 40 for the late miles. It's their own late mile division, and there was a little action on the home stretch.
Oh boy.
Ron Chrisman became the man in this race. The number 5 car coming into the lead.
I'll watch Chrisman through turn number 2. Nice deft little move down there to the bottom, and Ron's going to go on and collect the checkered flag for the Firecracker 40 for the late models.
He held off John Durlance, who he's congratulating in victory lane.
Here's the modified action. Chip Slocum in the orange number 61, slicing and dicing with Tom Mayberry in the number 16 machine.
Slocum, he's driving the Lou Cozy on number 61. That's Frank Cozy's brother.
They work their way now into traffic, and meanwhile behind them some pretty heavy action stacking up. There is Mr. Von Doren in the number 114. He's trying to fight his way up there to get at Slocum and get the lead, but then this tie-up in turn number 1, and around goes Von Doren.
Von Doren held on and kept going. This was a Sunday night show, by the way. That's why Von Doren was in the field, but he couldn't quite pull off the pass of Slocum to get the win.
Slocum comes across and gets the dude. There's Chip down in victory lane at Grandview. From high in the sky, it's a look at the Oxford Plains Speedway, home of one of the most famous short track races in the country, the annual True Value Oxford 250.
Over $40,000 on the line in this race for the winner, and Ralph Nason in the number 10 was the man to watch.
Now, Nason actually spun twice during the race, and, well, some other drivers had some more waterfall fortunes or misfortunes.
Early in the race, Sam Sessions was a contender, but right here, blows up and he's done.
It's dead, Jim. Tough break for Sammy Sessions. Meanwhile,
this was the key point of the race, lap 129. Nason and Dale Shaw, the 2 main contenders in the race, they both pit. Here's Nason getting 2 right side tires, and on the next lap, Nason comes back into the pits to get 2 left side tires, giving him 4 new tires when everybody else only had 2.
Now Mike Rowe and Dale Shaw were battling for the lead around the lap 200 mark of this 250. But remember, Nason is coming up through the field. He's got much, much fresher tires. And check this, a little hip checking going on here, courtesy of Mr. Rowe.
And here comes Nason right up on the inside. Tracy Gordon tried to keep pace with him for a little while in number 17. And this is the top 4 going for the lead late in the race.
Racing Nason going down to the inside to take care of Shaw. Now he's going to look for Rowe, and the point as it goes down the backstretch.
Nason, 56 years old, he's been running in this race for 25 years, never won it. So you can imagine what he did when he took the checkered flag.
He was one pumped up guy and had some very eloquent statements to make during the course of the Victory Lane interview.
A hell of a race. I had a hell of a race, and the rest of them that don't like it can go to hell.
Somebody get that guy an Austin 316 shirt. Autodrome Drum and Skull Bandit Racing Super Dirt Series.
A big half-mile racetrack. Bob McCready, Danny Johnson, Brett Hearn has a little bit of trouble.
Hearn flattening a tire on the Bud number 3 would get back out into the contest but not be a factor in this race.
Jimmy Horton running another good race, but it wasn't enough to beat Doug Hoffman, who had his only win in a Sweeteners Plus car in the Skull Series.
Following night, Autodrome Granby, boom, crash opera up in turns 3 and 4, and Brett Hearn is involved again. Take another look at this one, because the impact in here is pretty significant.
You'll notice Brett Hearn smashing into the side of Tim Fuller. Brett nearly flipped, and the hit was so hard that Fuller's frame was damaged.
Doug Hoffman looking for his second straight Skull Series win in the Sweeteners Plus #1, takes the lead from impressive Canadian Steve Poirier, but it's the Hurricane Steve Payne driving the car that's based in Canada that's coming up through the field. Over the past couple of seasons, Payne has owned Autodrome Granby. This year he stuck close to home and ran at Canandaigua on Saturday nights and decided not to go to Granby, but you can't take the Granby out of Steve Payne.
It was a replay of the 1997 Skull race at Granby when Payne beat Hoffman.
Lebanon Valley Speedway, a twin bill for the modifieds. Brett the Jet feeling a little bit of pressure by this time of the year because he wants to be in contention for the points championship. While Kenny Tremont is ducking down to the inside here of John Hewitt, just ahead of him, and it's a good thing Tremont was on the bottom when this happened, Hearn and many others get tangled up. So Hearn's knocked out of contention in the first feature and Tremont goes on to capture it.
Tremont gets out in victory lane. That's his usual spot this year.
Now we work to the nightcap. Not much of a contest in this one, Kevin.
Tremont pretty much dominated it. He goes on the inside Eddie Marshall, and you can notice he goes on the inside. That's where that race car works so well this year and where he won so many races.
A somber note at the Orange County Fair Speedway with the Barbara Luce night.
Barbara was an up-and-coming sportsman driver, 18 years old, and she was tragically killed at the end of June in a motorcycle accident.
It's Neil and many of the family members receiving a checkered flag autographed by all of the drivers.
And there was a touching moment to end the night. Neil Luce goes on to take a checkered flag.
It was during the course of a sportsman dash competition that Luce grabbed this checker. You could see a standing ovation from the crowd, and there's Neil and family members in victory lane.
Nancy and I would just like to thank the whole dirt community, the whole racing community. There are no better people out there.
Super Modifieds at the Flemington Speedway, New Jersey, and Chris Purley sets a new speed and time record on a 5/8 mile track with a lap at over 154 miles per hour.
They don't even go straight on this racetrack. It's going around circles.
Matter of fact, the Super Modified drivers say they don't even know what corner they're in, and half the time they can't see the flag stand. They're going by it so fast during the course of a race here. Now, late in this 100-lap contest, it appeared that maybe Randy Riskus had the hot hand, and maybe Mike Ordway, too. But this is what happened. Ordway gets tangled up with Joey Moriarty, and there's Riskus, who caught a piece of debris and wound up sliding in. All three drivers knocked out, inheriting the lead. Former and defending ISMA champion Russ Wood gets the checkered flag. Back to New Egypt Speedway for some more mods.
Rich Polands, he's a former Flemington dirt racer, and he went on to win in this one here.
You can see that unique shape of the New Egypt surface there as Polands takes it down off turn number 4, tiptoeing his way to the checker.
Here comes Holsizer, taking the
Utica Rome Speedway opened under two different promoters this year. First under John Zemanis, the former promoter, and then the former promoter, Bud Benway and Eric Kingsley.
And this was back under Kingsley right here. And Roger Phelps, he dominated the early parts of Kingsley's races.
Coming home with the Beastmers Gypsum Express number 99 with another checkered flag at the half mile. Rockville, Ontario Speedway, Skull Bandit Racing Super Dirt Series for the 350A Modifieds, and a little history in the making.
Brett came from all the way in the rear with his Ford-powered car to beat Alan Johnson for the win.
They had a good dice going running high and low on the racetrack, but it was Hearn who ultimately held ground on the high side to get the win.
I'll tell you, this Ford engine is unbelievable. It's flawless. It just runs so perfect, and I believe this is the first win for a Ford on the Skull Small Block Series, so it's pretty special in that respect too.
Let's go to the fairgrounds at Kutztown for some micro sprints.
It's a neat little racetrack right in the middle of the town in Kutztown, which has some problems because it makes a little bit of noise, and the neighbors were a little bit up in arms about it, and they've been giving the track some problems.
And it looks like the track's giving the drivers some problems too on occasion.
And this race went to Randy West, a 20-lap micro sprint feature.
Back onto the Skull Tour. After a trip north of the border, the teams come back to the Can-Am Speedway for the Butt at the Border.
It was a real fast track service this night, and Ward ran the inside of perfection.
Doug Hoffman in the Sweeteners Plus car number 1 looking good, but when Pat Ward's hooked up in his TO car, forget about it.
Bob McCready had a little bit of problems here. He got way out of shape after a little tap from Decker.
Almost collected a bunch of people in the back of the field. You can see Gary Tompkins, among others, escaping around on the outside. Danny Johnson hopped in the number 1 car, and most of the crowd, and even, heck, the announcers didn't know until about halfway through the race that he was in the darn thing, and he tried to make a run towards the finish, but There wasn't stopping Pat Ward. You think he was pumped about his first Skull Series win? Skull Bandit Racing Super Dirt Series on the tight bullring confines of the Grandview Speedway.
This is part of the Thunder on the Hill series promoted by Bob Miller.
That's Jeff Strunk up there in that Kenworth number 9 machine working the outside of Jimmy Horton. Strunk storming up through the field was looking really good, but this minor contact with the wall going down the backstretch, Kevin, had repercussions towards the end of the race.
This was only about 10 laps ago when he was trying to catch up to Brett. He broke the W link on the car. A couple laps later, he was out of the race.
Brett Hearn holding on to the lead in this one pretty much from the get-go. Doug Hoffman and Billy Decker having some good runs behind him, but Brett the Jet had his day.
It was a historic race for Brett. He set a consecutive start record on the Skull Series.
Cornwall Motor Speedway and the Skull Series for the small blocks this time.
Timmy McCready and Danny O'Brien went at it for more than half of this race for the lead.
I tell you what, when they got into the seriously heavy traffic like right here, they were probably wishing they had lights and sirens like police cars.
Why was there so much traffic? The whole second half of the race was without a caution flag, and McCready went under the checkered flag for the win.
And here's Leadfoot coming across with the Drek Subs 94. At Fonda's 358 Skull Bandit Series stop, Kenny Tremont bringing the noise and the fun, dominating the field. Brett Hearn had to get a pair of binoculars out to keep his eyes on the race leader. Meanwhile, 358 points kingpin at this point. AJ Slideways' Alan Johnson was battling it out with Jimmy Horton. Tremont, no trouble at all, leading this one flag to flag. Super Modifieds Without Wings did some road tripping with the New York State Super Series presented by Empire Sports Network. At Tioga Speedway, the entire field in the first heat went off into the first turn foam on the first lap.
Mike Muldoon, he's a leader right here in the feature. He was in that wreck.
Behind him is George Kent. That's right, George Kent of Modified fame, who hadn't driven the Super Modified since 1974. Gets a little love tap from Denny Sewell. Goes sliding up the racetrack in turn number 4. Coming back through the field again, this time a little contact with the Bobby Smith number 11. And Kent's tasting a little foam on the outside of the 4th turn.
Kent had to go in the pits late in the race, less than 10 to go for a tire change after a wheel was bent.
Game closing in on Muldoon. Almost got him as they came down to the checker, but Muldoon hung on for the win. Brewerton Speedway, Skull Bandit Racing Super Dirt Series.
Who says Brett Hearn can't drive the small tracks? This was a proof that he could.
Working it with Pat Ward as they run through turns 1 and 2 on the D-shaped Dirt Demon.
Here's Brett, battle of TL Pro cars, taking the lead.
Ward coming back on the outside, but this slice and dice wasn't over yet because there was going to be another player in there. Bug Chaser Billy in the number 91, who by this point of the season was really starting to come on strong. Let's get ready to rumble! It's time for the Friday night fights at Brewer. This was a wild night. First, Allen giving brother Danny the what for after some contact. Danny, well, he didn't win too many friends or influence many people in a good way with the incident with Pat Ward here.
And Danny and Pat battling for the lead, and it coming down to the end. And Danny, well, he was sort of protecting his line here when Pat went to the outside.
They come off turn number 4. Can Ward pull the outside? Sweet stuff is more like it, as if he gets stuffed into the outside wall. Ward is obviously not a happy man and decides to make a deposit at the National Bank of Danny's window.
And Pat wasn't over with that. He goes over to the starter, talks him over a little bit. Danny ends up getting black flag at that point, and then Pat makes a little run over to Danny as he's getting towed in.
A couple of leftover hand jab shots at Danny on the way into the pits. And Billy Decker had his 2 front tires flattened in a wreck earlier in this race and came back after all the funning to collect the win. Evergreen Speedway, some Saturday night modified action, and the Russ France dance on the outside.
Pretty much the Russ France show tonight. He came from mid-pack, flying through the pack.
Working that outside second lane at the Evergreen Speedway. And Evergreen's one of the few asphalt tracks that has that solid second lane pretty much consistently every week.
France here passes Chris Amon, takes the lead, and goes on to the win.
While France was doing the deed in the modifieds, it was Phil DeMario who scored the victory when the ARDC midget stopped by Evergreen. DeMario running uncontested in the second half of the race to take home a set of checkers of his own. The doctor makes house calls, sometimes not even in his own house. Case in point, Joey Tobias Memorial at Susky.
This race was part of the Super Series for Vince Vicari's Susquehanna Speedway.
And that is Jeff Strunk in that Kenworth number 9 machine, holding on to the lead up in turns 1 and 2. Little stiff challenge there from Kenny Brightville in the Tabloid Graphics number 19, but Strunk gets the checker.
He was real happy. He had a bad season until that point.
Sprint cars were also on the build. Donnie Kreitz in the number 69, that familiar blue machine, and Lance DeWeese in the 461. They've started plenty of laps on Susky surface in their sprint cars.
Donnie Kreitz, he's Mr. Inside, and on a dry slick racetrack, there's nobody better. And he shows it right here, going right up the inside to pass Todd Schaefer for the lead.
Look at that bike coming off of that second corner. Kreitz gets it down to the bottom and comes away with the win in the Tobias Memorial.
Congratulations, Donnie. I'd just like to thank all the owners, drivers, and the fans that have come out tonight for this race.
Well, again, we thank them also, and thank you for being here, Mrs. Tobias. Mary Tobias, ladies and gentlemen.
Skull Series for 358 modifieds at Merrittville. Alan Johnson had to have his car push started to fire for the feature event. And according to the dirt roll book, when that happens, you're going to the back of the bus.
But he's a regular at the track this year. He knows Merrittville. He went right to the front. He passes Pete Bicknell, Mr. Small Block, Mr. Merrittville, to get to the front.
Brett the Jet Hearn in the AutoZone number 20 trying to chase him down, but no. Alan won the track championship at Merrittville and the Skull Show. The following night, Rensselaer Speedway, the annual Alex Friesen Summer Nationals. Beware the Moat Monster.
That was at the start of the race, brought the red flag out, but there was no other problems after that. And Alan definitely didn't have any other problems. He passes Todd Burley, a rising star in the dirt circuit.
A little bit further back, though, some calamities for some of the other drivers. Tim McCready gets caught up here with Pete Bicknell on the outside of turn number 2. And Kenny Brightville has his problems. No problems for Alan, though, as he collects the checkered flag in a couple of pretty solid paydays in a row. Fulton Speedway reopening under the ownership of the Fink family that owns the Brewerton Speedway. Their first event, a big block, small block shootout called the Showdown at Sundown.
And with Harvey Fink as the new promoter, there's a little bit of a dirt affiliation here, and the dirt stars like Billy Decker are in the field. He passes Mitch Gibbs to take the lead.
Pete Taylor in the number 6 and Johnny Ventura involved in that stumble in turn number 4. Pat Ward was going strong until a tire went down on his TL Pro number 56 machine. Decker came away with the win. Mr. Dirt Track USA at the Lebanon Valley Speedway. Kenny Tremont outdregs the Jet Brett Hearn as they work into traffic in turns 1 and 2. Bug Chaser Billy a little under the weather. Tremont's on top of the world with 17.5 plus in his pocket. Hey, let's go race burner racing at Linda's.
The little 4-cylinders at Linda Speedway out by Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, banging and smashing and crashing.
And if they get bored with circle track racing, these 4-cylinder drivers have some other tricks up their sleeves, like auto soccer. Only they use a tire instead of a ball. It's a goal!
Trevor Lewis went on to win this microsprint main.
NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series of Flemington.
And this was the battle for the lead late in the race. Terry Cook on the inside, Stacy Compton on the outside hits the wall.
He hit the wall real hard.
Story of the race also, John Blewett got in Billy Pouch's truck. His Pouch overheated a little bit at the halfway point. Came up to finish 6th. But Terry Cook took the win.
Forrest Rogers Memorial for the modifieds at Grandview leads to some serious stacking and cracking up in turns 1 and 2.
11 cars total in this pileup at the halfway point of the 40-lapper.
Chip Slocum in the number 61 was leading.
Then Rick Schaefer took over.
But then later, Slocum trying to come back through. Well, he does a roof dance of his own, and not the kind that most drivers like.
And Schaefer went on to win the race. His 19th season, he's won a race in a row there.
Delaware International Speedway approaching the stretch run of the Skull Bandit Racing Super Dirt Series. But before the race, Billy Taylor, transporting the Sweeteners Plus team cars, was involved in a crash, and this is the damage that was done to the team's transport rig. It landed Billy in the hospital that night. He was released the next day and is okay now, but there was some pretty touch and go moments during the course of the afternoon.
The accident happened about an hour north of the racetrack, so Doug had to have his own crew bring his trailer down to get him to the racetrack and bring the car down.
They wound up, he and teammate Vic Coffey qualifying as provisional starters, taking guaranteed starting positions. But that didn't stop Hoffman. He was a man possessed coming through the field during the course of this 98-lap feature event. Late in the race, working his way to second, Billy Decker in the number 91 moves into third behind Delaware regular and race leader Jamie Mills in the number 30.
Sure looked like there was going to be a storybook finish for Doug. Right at this moment, he passes and Mills to take the lead.
Hoffman working the outside. Mills dropping back in the number 2 spot. But with a few laps left to go, Mills moves in to challenge for the lead. Going inside of turns 3 and 4. Contact coming off the 4th turn. Hoffman's car gets pitched. There's debris everywhere. Mills goes into the lead. At just a lap or so later, Hoffman's car goes sailing off the outside of turn number 1 after contact again with Mills. You could say it was midnight Cinderella.
After the race, Doug just sat at his trailer and mourned that storybook finishes don't happen anymore.
The next to last lap of the race and the restart after Hoffman's crash. Mills on the inside, bug chaser Billy Decker on the outside, going for it on the backstretch, contact, but Decker is able to slip by on the outside and hold on to the lead of the ever-roughening Delaware surface to grab the win. A key victory in Decker's quest towards the first ever Skull Series title. East Windsor Speedway and the Leonard J. Salmons Memorial.
This race memorializes the founder of Erie Auto Racing.
Whoa, hard crash and major flippage on the backstretch with a little flame thrown in.
That's Mark Blackwell. He was uninjured in that wreck.
You might say that car's flame broiled, not fried. Green flag on the feature event.
Jumping out to the lead was Kevin Herther, an 18-year-old from Pennsylvania.
Now, Kevin hadn't been able to race in the state of New Jersey because he didn't turn 18 until this particular season. So while he was in competition and doing a good job, a lot of the heavy hitters that call Windsor home, like Doug Hoffman in the yellow Lincoln Autobahn number 5 machine, were working their way up from the back of the field, doing it the hard way.
Doug came up. This car owned by Dieter Schmidt's a Troyer machine. He comes into the front of the pack and he goes after Herther.
Working the inside in turns 1 and 2, staying on the bottom coming off turn number 4. Hoffman's got what he wants, the point.
This was before the halfway point of the 50-lapper, and after that, there was no touching Hoffman.
Or at least not by Hertler. There were some other drivers, though, that wanted to make contact with him and at least try to take the lead, namely Jimmy Horton and Kenny Brightbill.
But neither of them could catch Doug, and Doug, with the win, deadlocked himself with Billy Pouch for the all-time win lead at East Windsor.
Brightbill did manage to get into the 2nd spot and got a little bit close to Hoffman on a couple of occasions, but Hoffman clearly had the faster car. NASCAR Busch North Series on a quarter mile known as the Star Speedway.
Some heavy cars for a small track, but they really get around a little place.
Big battle up at the front of the field between Kelly Moore and the green and white Tic Tac number 47.
And Tracy Gordon in the number 14, and they battle pretty much the entire race. Here Gordon goes inside of Moore.
After a little give and go action through turns 3 and 4. And that scenario would repeat itself later in the race. But before that, traffic came into play quite a bit. A lot of green flag laps in this contest. Gordon was able to hold Moore off for most of that. But then Moore coming into turn number 3, you get what you give.
Moore, he knows how to intimidate on the Busch North Tour, and maybe did a little bit here. He gets Gordon, and that was the end of the race.
Gordon trying to recover and just get down to the bottom of the racetrack. And there you hear the response to Kelly Moore's win. Orange County First Speedway, Skull Series, rush hour on Dirt Live Television.
Chuck McKee started in the front row, but he wasn't able to get in the lead at the start. Jerry Higbee outgunned him.
The pack moving through turns 1 and 2. Kenny Tremont coming up to play with Higbee and McKee, making a 3-way dance at the front of the field.
Higbee's a young guy, 24 years old. He looked like he was going to be on his way to a first win.
But Chuck McKee had been having a superlative season at Orange County. Brett Hearn found that, well, like Thomas Wolfe said, you can't go home again.
This ended up being Brett Hearn's first year in 20 years that he hasn't won at Orange County.
McKee working down to the inside of Higbee, grabs the lead in the later stages of the event.
The race boiled down to Jeff Hetzer is the only man who could get McKee. He got outside of him, ran outside of him for an entire lap. He couldn't pull it off on the outside groove.
He did try, though, really muscling it hard on the outside of the racetrack. McKee, though, kept his composure. And as the race wore on, McKee was able to open up just enough of a breathing space to keep Hetzler at bay and get himself a win.
McKee's first ever Skull Series competition.
New York State Super Series at Williamson. George Kemp's back in the black number 1. And in the white Jason Cressidi driven number 91, usually, Billy Whitaker behind the controls. Whitaker, a late model campaigner at the racetrack, hounded Kemp tooth and nail, and eventually getting by him with a power move on the outside of the speedway.
Whitaker showed that he's a superstar in the making here. The guy, he got the most asphalt late model wins in the Northeast this year. He got right up on a Mike Muldoon, a super modified veteran superstar, before settling for 2nd place.
Muldoon scored the win and led every lap of feature events that were held on the road for the Empire Sports Super Series this year. Hey, here's something fun. This is the Shippensburg Speedway from a different perspective. Inside a 4-cylinder.
kind of car do you think this is, Paul? Maybe an Escort or something?
I have no idea, but I know this is a tiny little racetrack going into turn number 3, and whoa, look out! Okay, this is not in-car.
It's a micro sprint, the headline division at this track down by the Maryland border.
Little quarter mile produces plenty of action for the micro sprint campaigners. They got plenty of room to work with, but now, you know, eventually you do run out of room.
The winner of this night was Jake Mays. He's a superstar in the micro sprint ranks in Pennsylvania.
Black Rock Speedway in the 358 Skoal Series. Black Rock extended their track out to a full 4/10 of a mile this year. Really fast sweeping corners. The Hurricane Steve Payne likes this place a lot.
He won the track championship this year, and he also won this Skoal race. Here he comes up through the field, coming up on Danny Johnson, who is back in the Bill Trout Bicknell car.
This is the small block car that Gary Tompkins was usually driving in the regular Friday night shows at Black Rock Speedway. Payne bringing it off turn number 4 after fighting his way through the field to get another hard-earned win on the Black Rock clay. Cayuga County Fair Speedway and the 358 Skoal Series on the Big High Banks.
Todd Burley, a superstar in the making, also in the Dirt 358 modified ranks, splitting lap cars, showing his talent.
That's Gary Tompkins in the number 84 trying to chase him down. But whenever there's a small block show, or a big block show for that matter, at Cayuga County, you cannot count out A.J. Slideways.
A.J. was put aside a little bit of the controversy that was revolving around him with the cylinder head issue from the week before at Frogtown, and he passes Burley to take the lead.
Working it down on the inside. Lap traffic, a key factor in the second half of this race, but Alan Johnson, the veteran, able to carefully poke his way through the slower cars to get the checkered flag at Cayuga County. A dramatic night of competition at the Can-Am Speedway on the 358 Skoal Series. Leadfoot Tim McCritty and Pistol Pete, Mr. Small Blocks Bicknell doing the slide slick track samba thing.
Yeah, Bicknell wasn't exactly happy with how Timmy got him there. He gave him a little shot later on, but this was the last lap, and it was exciting.
Brett the Jet Hearn kicks in the afterburners on the auto zone number 20 off the 4th turn. Power move. It shuts down Tim McCritty to score the win. Brett the Jet doing it in dramatic fashion. It's Thunder on the Hill at Grandview.
That's Freddie Raymer, the first of many flips.
He was joined in the Upside Down Club by Lance DeWeese, who promptly gets popped
by Cliff Bryant.
Some serious damage to both of these cars. And we're not done yet.
Dave Ely and Greg Hodnett had a vicious accident in turn 3, and Hodnett took exception to what happened, how it started.
That's Hodnett coming over, trying to insert himself with Dave Ely, and then he's promptly gang tackled by an official. This looks like a mugging in a wrestling match.
Thought that official was going to pull his helmet right off.
Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and everybody did eventually get themselves settled. And poor Dave Ely was sitting there wondering what the heck happened.
He was injured a little bit, had a concussion in that accident.
That's Jeff Shepard in the number 4, working it on the outside of the racetrack. Whenever you've got Thunder on the Hill, you got Billy the Kid firing his 6-gun. Couch gets the win. Penn Speedway, their annual end-of-season event that showcases the regulars at the racetrack. They like to call this Penn Spectacular.
The man to beat in this one was George Kostolansky. He lives in Pennsylvania now, but he's from Bridgewater, New Jersey. He went to high school with Jimmy Horn.
He's in the brown number 17 machine, working his way up through the field here. Taking the outside lane down the front stretch, coming up on Randy Decker and going to the outside of him up in turns 1 and 2.
Once Kostolansky disposed of Decker, that was the end of the race. He had the race in the bag.
Butch Tittle in the Z-Car does a 180 on a one-way street, and a couple of other drivers are about to feel it, not once, but twice. Kostolansky brings it home for the win in the Penn Can Spectacular. Biggest event of the year at Big Diamond Raceway, the annual Cold Cracker 100, and this one was a throwdown.
Jeff Strunk was trying to salvage a season. He hadn't had many wins like he was normally accustomed to, and here he takes the lead early in the race, and it seemed like he was going to blow the field away.
Taking the outside lane going up into turn number 3. Strunk had his mojo working for sure as he took over the top spot. A little bit further back, though, some prime contenders in the field. Tom Mayberry in the number 16 gets turned around. Ray Swinehart collected in there, along with Craig Von Dorn in the 114. Chip Slocum barely avoids in the number 61 machine. Now, Slocum factors in here as he comes up on Keith Hoffman in the number 6 machine. They come up on Jimmy Howard. Slocum gets a piece of Howard, and Howard's going for a ride.
Howard thought that it was Keith Hoffman who did this. So under the next caution flag, here's Howard. He comes up, says hello to Keith Hoffman.
Turns Keith right around now. Of course, under yellow, the officials put Keith Hoffman back up in the front of the field. Hoffman went after Jeff Strunk, and they were having a pretty vicious battle. Coming down with just a couple laps to go. Crisscross attempt by Keith Hoffman. They go into turn number 1. There's contact. They're both on top of each other, and they're out of the park, baby.
There was a lot of action going on in the pit area when after this happened.
Restart with a lap to go. Mayberry, remember he spun earlier, battling with Dwayne Howard, whose car had gotten pretty battered during the course of this race.
Earlier, Howard had a little tangle with Keith Hoffman, knocked his rear end off 2 inches, but he gets underneath Mayberry in the final corner.
They work through turns 3 and 4, and somehow with a battered race car, Dwayne Howard comes home with a Cold Cracker 100 win at Big Diamond. Hey, if you think he was pumped up, give me a hell yeah! Thompson Speedway playing host to the NASCAR Featherline Modified Tour.
250-lap race over that Labor Day weekend.
Big 5/8 mile racetrack with big, huge banks. You can pull some major speed down on this speedway.
First half of the race was dominated by Chris Kopech, the Riverside Park regular at number 16.
But you can never count out the likes of Stefanik, Ruggiero, and many of the other top guns on the Featherline Modified Tour. And Stefanik soon found it time to take his turn at the point.
He came out of the pits first after a pit stop at mid-race, and he avoided this accident.
Now, it doesn't look like much, maybe just a couple of 3 race cars here, but by the time all the dust and the smoke settles, look at what's left on the backstretch. A virtual parking lot of cars. Jan Leedy, Tom Baldwin all involved in this. Carl Pasterjak's car involved. Several top contenders.
Luckily, no injuries, and there really wasn't that much major damage. A lot of the guys returned.
Stefanik, peeking and poking his way through traffic, has a close call here, almost. Chris Kopech does get caught up in the mess.
This was the key point of the race. Stefanik running in between Mike Iwanitsko and Rick Fuller in the lead. Lap car takes out Fuller and Iwanitsko.
Stefanik almost got clipped there. You can see a couple of other drivers having to spin to avoid this incident, but Stefanik was able to sneak through. He brought home the checkered flag in Thompson's Featherlight Tour Series stop.
Stefanik's 11th feature win on the tour.
An in-car view of the Budweiser International Classic, the biggest super modified race of the year and the biggest super race in the country, held at the Steel Palace, the Oswego Speedway.
1998 Oswego champion Mike Muldoon didn't figure in the outcome, though. He broke and was out of the race early.
Bentley Warren, only the week before the Classic, accepted the offer to drive the car that George Kennedy campaigned on the Empire Sports Super Series, the backup car for Jeff West. Bentley gave it one heck of a run, driving the Molson #1 machine down and eventually passed last year's Classic winner, Davey Hamilton, who was driving one of Mike Muldoon's race cars. And this pass came with only a few laps left to go in the Classic. The fans were on their feet. Did Bentley Warren win a 6th Budweiser International Classic? Oh, you better believe he did. As a matter of fact, Bentley was so overcome by emotion he was literally crying as he came down into Victory Lane, where he was greeted by a bunch of well-wishers. Skoal Super Dirt Series Big Block style at Cayuga County.
This was the next to last race of the 1998 Skoal Series.
Danny Johnson in the RJD Trucks #6, Brett Hearn in the Budweiser #3, having a little battle on the racetrack as they work their way through some of the lap traffic. This race had a lot of clean and green laps, so a lot of contenders like Gary Tompkins there in the #84 found themselves off the pace. Barefoot Bob McCready found himself over the cushion and almost over the wall on the outside of 1 and 2.
Kept it in the racetrack and kept on going.
And for the doctor, it was a pair of checkers, and also the last checkers he would get in the RJD Trucks racing machine. Tuscarora 50 for the All-Star Sprints at Port Royal.
Biggest, fastest half mile in central Pennsylvania, and Greg Hodnett, who took over the Apple Chevrolet car, he easily won it.
Now on to Grandview Speedway's biggest event of the year, the annual Freedom 76.
Grandview race organizer Teresa Rogers said it was the biggest crowd ever, over 9,000 people at the racetrack.
Qualifying heats produce a lot of action because it's probably tougher to get into the Freedom 76 than it is to win it.
Around 90 cars always come to the Freedom 76, and this year was no different.
Look at this parking lot on the inside of the 4th turn, and this was just during one of the qualifying events.
The field comes around, getting ready to take the green flag.
Bombs bursting in air, and rockets red glare, and all that stuff. Okay, let's do some racing.
This is Billy Pouch in the 1, his own Pouch Tobias chassis car, racing up through the field.
Craig Von Doren tangling up with Tom Mayberry, catching a bunch of other people up there on the outside of turns 1 and 2.
Von Doren survived, but the battle for the lead was Pouch and Ray Swinehart in the 712, a titanic battle for the last 10 laps of the race.
But Pouch gets it, and the big payday, and the trophy queen. Tioga Speedway in the Twin Tier 175 on the Sunoco ROC Trail.
George Kent, the NASCAR regional champion, took the lead in the 26.
But J.R. Kent, his son, made a pit stop with about 25 laps left and used the outside lane to power around Dad.
And after that, he avoided a couple little tangles, and JR had a big win.
Super Modifieds in the Star Classic, the third leg of the Isla Triple Crown. Joey Payne, who won the first 2 events of the Triple Crown, if he could win the third event, he'd come home with the $25,000 bonus on top of everything else, and he was leading until the very last lap when Mike Ordway was able to slip underneath him in the number 26 machine and hold him off for the win. Busch North Series at Thompson Speedway. Kelly Moore's doing a little lawn mowing on the front stretch.
Kelly taken out of contention really early in the 300.
Winds up making contact with another car in the field and causing the caution up on the outside of turns 1 and 2. Now look at this. Martin Truex in that red machine, he can't get out of his pit stall because he's completely blocked in by everybody else.
One of those crewmen practically is ready to push. He's taking the rear end off the other car in front of him.
And finally get Martin out of his pit stall, but he's lost a bunch of ground as a result. Mike Stefanik powering down to the inside of Brian Wall at the end of the front stretch, goes low in turns 1 and 2. And Stefanik gets another win at Thompson, this time in his Busch North ride.
En route to another Busch North championship.
East Windsor Speedway, the Triple Bill, Street Stocks in center spotlight first.
The man to watch any street stock race anywhere, not just in East Windsor, is Jack Zeiner, the number 8, the orange car.
Zeiner has been a street stock veteran for years. He's won at Nazareth, he's won at Penn National, he's won at Big Diamond. Heck, he's won just about anywhere in Pennsylvania or New Jersey that street stocks won. And guess what? He won this one too. Sportsman cars are a new addition this year for East Windsor.
And they look just like the small block headliners with the big Batmobile wings on the sides.
You see a little tangle up here in the middle of the pack, sends a couple of guys in for a hard ride.
Nobody injured in that wreck.
At the end of this one, Ryan Godown in the number 260 machine was looking for the lead.
Battles up on the inside here, throwing it into turn 1, and he comes off the second turn with the lead.
Ryan Godown goes on to win the Sportsman feature event. The headline of this night was a 100-lapper for those small blocks.
This is the longest race of the year at East Windsor, and also is the highest paid one, $6,000 to the winner.
Pack working its way through turns 1 and 2 in the early going. A bunch of campaigners working on the outside there, including Doug Hoffman as he pops to the outside. Kenny Brightville, though, gets caught in this pileup in turns 1 and 2.
You'd think he would be done for the night, but he wasn't. They'll talk about him later. Here's Doug Hoffman passing Eddie Bone for the lead.
But on the last lap, Hoffman's car starts to falter, and here comes Kenny Brightville building up big head of steam on the outside. You can see that the engine is starting to let go on the Hoffman machine, and down the back stretch it grenades. And there goes Brightville around on the outside. Brightville gets the win and the $6,000. Super Sportsman in competition at the Williams Grove Speedway.
Race part of the Napa Tour for the Super Sportsman that goes to some central Pennsylvania racetracks.
Working down on the bottom of the speedway is the black number 22 machine.
Mark Smith. He's a Silver Spring regular, and he goes inside of Paul Troutman to take the lead about the halfway point of the race.
And Troutman coming back down on the inside, trying to return the favor as they work their way down off turn number 4, side by side as they work towards the first turn at the end of that long drag strip type straightaway.
Smith squeezed around the outside of him, and after that, he couldn't be touched.
So Smith goes on to collect the win for the Super Sportsman in the contest at Williams Grove. Time for some sprint cars at Selinsgrove.
The National Open, you can see they're flying down the straightaway with the vapor trail flying off of Greg Hodden's win.
And look at what happens in the back of the field here as the pack works through turns 1 and 2. All it takes is just one, and all of a sudden it's a party and everybody's invited. Everybody did walk away from this one, including Kevin Gobrecht, who was the last car to come careening in.
Greg Hodden pretty much had this race covered, except he had a little problem with lap track. Here's going up on New York driver George Suprick.
Suprick's car goes backing into the fence over in turns 3 and 4. If you look at it from a different angle, you can see how the Suprick car just had the tire shredded off of it after the contact.
Hodden cruised towards another win in central Pennsylvania.
The Race of Champions weekend at the Oswego Speedway. First off, let's look at the ROC itself for the Mod Squad.
200 lappers, the third year it has been in Oswego.
Heavy traffic early on in the race. A bunch of people trying to move up, including Super Siege Fidanza. The foam blocks were in effect and definitely got stress tested during the Race of Champions weekend. There's Johnny Brewer pulling into the pits in the number 14 machine to make a pit stop just as another car slows on the racetrack and puts the race under caution.
Blewett broke an A-frame just as he had taken the lead in the race.
Here is Super Siege battling it out with Tim Mangus as they work it through turns 3 and 4.
Mangus thought he was faster than Siege, but he couldn't get there. Had been a little bit of rain late in the race, and he couldn't get on the outside. It was a little too slick for him.
And Siege Fidanza comes home with his first ever win in the Sunoco Race of Champions. The Super Modifieds were also on the Bill Race of Champions weekend with the final round of the Umpire Sport Super Series. Mike Muldoon pretty much locked up the title, so this race was just purely for bragging rights, and Muldoon wasn't a factor in this one.
This race belonged to Bob Gutermount, who emerged as a star this year last week.
Greg Furlong, who had also emerged as star status, finishing in the number 2 spot. Sportsman cars in competition. Buck Catalano in the black number 14. Bypassing this wreck, he would go on and collect the checkered flag in the sportsman portion of the Race of Champions. It's a pretty impressive year for Catalano as you look at this parking lot incident over at turns 1 and 2. Catalano won a ton of races this year at the Williamson International Speedway in that same black machine.
He got to go to Nashville for winning the NASCAR Short Track Series.
The late models were also on the bill. John Juliker in the 09 goes under Brad Bisonow's car number 36. Bisonow, a two-time past winner of the late model portion of the Race of Champions weekend, but Juliker breaks his streak. Autodrome Granby, and the first of the 200s for the year, as the battle for the Mr. Dirt Championship was joined.
Doug Hoffman's race didn't last too long. First lap, he brakes on the home stretch, broken rear end, and other cars pile up.
Included this Tim Fuller in the number 19. They're sliding in. A bunch of other campaigners at the back of the field. There's the damage done to Tim McCready's drag subs machine. Hoffman's car was in the garage area as well. Back on the racetrack, though, there was some pretty hefty action going on between Dave Camara, who was the Autodrome Granby track champion in 1998, and AJ Slideway's Alan Johnson, who picked up a ride in a car that Tim McCready used to drive, owned by Jim Beachy, picking up sponsorship from the folks at Mitsubishi Corporate out of Japan.
Yep. And that car right there is a brand new Bicknell car, and Alan drove it to victory lane.
AJ Slideways receiving the accolades from the French-Canadian fans in Quebec after his win in the 200 at Granby. Strike up the band. It must be time for the Pittsburgher.
Pittsburgh Motor Speedway's biggest race of the year. It's a star-sanctioned late model race, paying $21,000 to win.
Pittsburgh Motor Speedway wide, fast, and sweeping, and also very smooth. Perfect conditions for dirt late model racing. A little bit further back in the field, the tangle up here involves a couple of cars. Now look at this, Gary Stuller picking up the pony wheel, the number 19, like he was driving a modified or a sprint car.
Problem with that, he's wearing out that right rear tire. It wasn't set up right, and then the transmission starts to go as he's up in the front of the pack.
That's Tim Hinton, the number 68, sliding underneath him, trying to grab the lead as they work through traffic. Stuller's car really starts to go south. Hitt takes evasive action down the middle and grabs the point.
Hitt, he's from West Virginia. He won his second time in 3 years, the Pittsburgh 100.
Mike Balzano tried to chase him to the end, but couldn't get by him. And there he is enjoying his winner's share. Stafford Speedway received a new paving job.
And it was made the racing even faster than it normally is. And this was the SKs during the 300 weekend at the end of September.
Now, it's one of the Christophers, but it's not Ted driving the 82.
It's his twin brother, Mike, and he gets in a little tangle here with Frank Wainwright, the front of the pack.
Big time crash on the outside of turn number 4. Now, Mike's car's got a destroyed front end. He's parked down on the apron of the racetrack. And he's going to take exception to Mr. Wainwright's actions.
He goes over, he steps in front of the car, and Wainwright had to sort of stop.
Fortunately, some cooler heads prevailed after Christopher vented his frustration. But it didn't seem to last very long because on the ensuing restart,
Chris Jones gets into the back of Wainwright's car, and Wainwright hits the wall.
Wainwright knocked out of the competition. Jones holds on to the lead.
The action still hadn't stopped after this, though, and in the next restart, another tangle.
This time working their way down off turn number 4, coming under the green flag. Jones leads the pack into turns 1 and 2, but this action goes on at the back of the field.
That 13, that was Ted Christopher. He was in the middle of it.
And the yellow flag did not fly.
Chris Jones holds on then, goes to the checkered flag.
Working it into turns 3 and 4 for the final time. Get ready to come down for the checkered flag. Jones in the number 1 machine gets the Duke at Stafford. Fulton Speedway in the Victoria 200.
Biggest race of the year for small block modifieds, 20,000 to win. Harvey Fink had a great day as a promoter this year.
The starting field of 42 that originated from over 115 cars that tried to qualify. This set up what most people are considering the wreck of the year. Gary Tompkins bumps Dale Plank. Plank hits the backstretch wall. It's not over. Buckle your seatbelts. Mike Colston, Pat Ward, and Roy Shields all getting into the upside-down club. Ward in a major way, a triple flip.
Ward was a little sore from this race. You can see he didn't look too good, but he got out of it. He wins the next day at Syracuse.
Meanwhile, back to the racing action, and it was intense on the Speedway. That's Mike Rickey in the 28. That's the FX1 with Danny Johnson at the controls for this race, and Tim Fuller in the number 19 making a winning move.
Fuller got the lead with about 74 laps to go, but he was never really far ahead.
Heavy traffic is always a major player anytime that the Victoria 200 has been run at the Fulton Speedway. Fuller mastering the use of traffic, being able to run just to the outside of the slower cars and not lose momentum, gets a $20,000 payday and a big 200 win.
Well, it means a lot of incentive to go into Super Dirt Week, and you know, it's $20,000 and 200 laps, and it's just the prestige of winning this race. You know, Billy Pouch, Kenny Braybill, you know, those are names in racing, and they've won this, and now I've won it.
Off to Waterford, Connecticut.
Their big year-ending race, the first weekend in October.
Heads up, everybody! Incoming! Neiman Midget's on the bill.
This was a brother battle, Mike Seymour and Bobby Seymour.
Midgets get around this little track at Waterford very well, but occasionally there are mishaps and tangles and broken parts.
But no flips in that instance.
And here are the brothers Seymour doing it to it.
And Bobby takes the win.
And the late models also campaigned at the Waterford Speedball, and Alan Coates got the victory in the number 90 machine. For him, it was lucky number 13, his 13th win of the year at Waterford.
Dominated the season there.
The Modifieds won 100 lappers as a part of this big weekend festival of speed.
And the man to beat was a youngster, a teenager, Eric Byrne.
Eric driving the number 54 machine, working it on the outside of the speedway off turn number 4, holding on to the point. And hey, this is short track racing. And when you have short track racing, you tend to have wrecks, and sometimes they're big, loud, noisy, and involve lots of cars and lots of parts.
But Burt wasn't in any of them, and he holds off Tucker Reynolds and Michael Goddard to take the win.
And enjoys the swirls at Victory Lane.
Where you got your hand?
Super Dirt Week kicking off on Friday with the triple qualifying races for the Mod Squad.
And Bobby Varon, he was the pole sitter on Wednesday's time trials, and as he went away from the pack, the man to watch was Dave Blaney.
Dave Blaney in that going number 4 had missed qualifying, so he needed to get into a spot.
He definitely worked fast, going way to the inside. He went from 27th to 17th in one lap.
Bobby Varon gets the win in the first of the triple qualifying races. Race number 2, the Bug Chaser, Billy Decker going 3 deep with Jack Johnson and Kenny Tremont. Hey, Billy, you can't pass on the outside of turn 2 at Syracuse. Yeah, try telling the Bug Chaser that. That was the move of the race right there. Decker flag to flag in race number 2. Race number 3 turned out to be a show for a TO Pro car with a guy by the name of Pat Ward at the controls. Ward had gotten his first win at Syracuse in the postponed Labor Day race just a couple of weekends before Syracuse, and proved he was going to be a contender in the 300 with this win and a qualifier. On to Saturday, the Mr. Dirt Street, now we call them in 1999 Pro Stocks.
There was some wild action right at the beginning of this race. The narrow backstretch wasn't quite wide enough for these cars.
That's Ted Teal, the number 40, pitching into the wall, and that number 14 machine there lost the rear end and almost flipped. Talk about hard hits. Watch Jim Lagovax, number 54. 1 pop, 2 pops, 3 pops, third one courtesy of Andy Dembeck, who was in the thick of the Mr. Dirt Pro Stock title points chase. When he was knocked out of this crash, he lost his shot at the title. Tom Cannizzaro wins the race. Tommy Barron in second wins the Mr. Dirt Street Stock title. Later that same day, the Sportsman cars doing battle. Alton Palmer in the black number 76 and Steve Hall, who would eventually be the Mr. Dirt Sportsman champion, battling for position.
This was for second place. They were nowhere near the winner, Chris Kokoza, but other than that.
Kokoza standing in victory lane with the representatives from Save-On. Now later that afternoon, the prolonged 200 for 358 modifieds. The weather had taken a turn for the worse. As a matter of fact, it was misting or raining pretty good the entire length of this race. Look at all the raindrops on the camera lens.
Drivers had to be very, very careful because of that. You get out of that groove a little bit and you're in trouble.
Now here's a look from inside one of the race cars, and watch how many times driver reaches up for a tear-off here. Once, twice. Matter of fact, this is Billy Decker's car. Going into turns 1 and 2 in the middle of the turn, sideways at 140 miles an hour, reaching for another tear-off. These guys were running out of tear-offs very quickly, and when that happened, you had to flick the visor up and take your chances. Trouble in turn number 3.
Everybody piles up. Chuck McKee's involved there, Maynard Ferret.
McKee able to drive away. Jimmy Horton gambled on a gas strategy, going for a late race gas and go. The gamble almost worked for him. But the story of this race turned out to be a restart with about 18 laps left to go. Kenny Tremont leading, and you can see now as the rain has continued to fall, the track is much, much slicker. It's only one lane. Pete McNell goes for a do-or-die move on the inside going into turn number 1, and somehow skates in front of Tremont to grab the lead.
McNell had used, maybe he used that little bit of extra power from that Ford power plant he had in there. Tremont had a Chevy.
Coming down to the end of the race, there was lap traffic right in front of McNell as they came down for the checkered flag. Could Tremont find a way by as they closed in on the flying checkers from David Farney? The answer, no. McNell gets the win at Syracuse.
Well, I was making moves like that all day. It was real slippery in the bottom, but everybody tried to stay in where there was bite right in the middle of the track, and I just go right in the bottom or up top and right in the slippery stuff. I have it spinning and going sideways and all kind of stuff, but the car worked great. I had enough tear-offs just to last me. I ran out of tear-offs with about 12 laps to go. I thought I was going to be in trouble. I kept every lap. I'd have to wipe every corner. So half the times we were steering one hand and wiping with the other. It was unbelievable.
Now time for, as Ed Sullivan would say, the really big shoe, the Eckerd 300.
Billy Decker, obviously the favorite by everyone going into the race.
Green flag in the air. Bobby Barron grabs the early lead from Decker as the field storms down for the start of this Super Derby Classic.
And guess who everybody started watching at the beginning of the race? Yeah, there it was, number 4, Dave Blaney.
Blaney starting deep in the field. Remember, he had to run one of the qualifying races on Friday to even get a spot in the show, and he was running a ragged edge. How close do you dare to get to the outside of turn 2? How about this close, working on the back of Eddie Marshall? Whoa! Almost ate the fence on that one.
Blaney did know it was a mile track, right?
He absolutely did know, and he was stretching it out as far as he could possibly go. But he wasn't the only one. Bobby Barron getting caught on the outside here, loses a bunch of ground before he can get it back into the groove. Now, for pit stops. Blaney gets a perfectly timed pit stop courtesy of Bobby Hearn and the rest of the team, and they send this experimental TO Pro car out in plenty of time for Blaney to get good track position. And he starts working his way through the field now in the second half of the race, trying to get up towards the front where Decker, among others, is residing. They work around turns 1 and 2. He's behind Alan Johnson when suddenly catches the inside berm, and look out! Tasting the concrete and finding out that it's not a good part of a balanced diet.
Blaney's front end was completely trashed on that car. He was very apologetic to Brian Goey afterwards, car owner. The car owner, he says, don't worry about it. Next year we'll get him.
Another wreck up in turn number 2. This one takes out barefoot Bob McCurdy. Watch him get shoved forcibly hard into the outside wall in turn number 2. Everybody holding their breath here, but Bob walked away from the crash unharmed and accepted a ride from some of the Oneida Indian Nation folks back to the pits.
The race after that boiled down to a fuel mileage deal.
Pat Ward, the number 56, runs out of gas with 2 to go. Then coming down the front stretch, Kenny Tremont also runs out of fuel. The question is, does Billy Decker up on the point have enough gas to go the distance, or could second place running Bud Crispin in the Briosky car score the upset of the decade and winning the 300? Wasn't going to happen. Decker had his fuel mileage calculated perfectly, comes under the checkered flags, not only winning his first ever Eckerd 300, but his first ever Skoal Bandit Racing Super Dirt Series title.
He also virtually assured himself of the Mr. Dirt title with this. All he had to do was start the next 2 races at Fonda and Orange County.
Billy Decker, a very happy guy. He was so intense he never smiled until Victory Lane at Syracuse. Now, while Syracuse was going on, the Bridgeport Speedway held an alternative race if you will.
It was a race put on by Norm Foss, a promoter at Bridgeport. Small blocks ran on Saturday, and Roger Loreno dominated. He was number 36.
Loreno takes the victory on Saturday. Now the big blocks took center stage for their event on Sunday.
Billy Pouch jumped in the lead at the beginning in the 75 lapper, but he couldn't hold on to win the race.
Pouch was driving the number 704 machine that he has campaigned on numerous occasions, and while some other drivers were throwing shoes at the back of the field, Pouch was having a little bit of a problem with his own. The right front was starting to loosen up on the number 704 machine, and eventually it parted company from Pouch's car.
Pouch dropped out. That opened the door for Keith Hoffman. He was driving his own number 6, a small block.
In a field of big blocks, but Keith Hoffman scored the biggest win of his career to date, picking up the checkered flag in the special Tri-State Open competition event at Bridgeport.
It also happened to be on his daughter's birthday.
The micro version of the National Open happens at the Lindy Speedway.
On Friday night, a horrible crash involved superstar microsprint driver Mike Miller, the number 4, right here. He hits it into the wall very hard.
You see the front end of the car literally just folded up and practically dumped into his lap. He had a broken nose, broken heel, amongst some other injuries. You get a different look at the crash from this angle as the field works off the corner. You see where he just went straight into the wall, nose first, and the car just kind of tumbled around there a little bit.
That ended Miller's hopes for a National Open win.
National Open for Micro is very competitive. Over 100 race cars trying to get into the field for this prestigious Cheap Feature Championship event. Mike Deisley, the number 44, who's always been a top campaigner in micro sprint competition, not only at Lindy's but all over the Pennsylvania area, wound up being the man on this occasion, filtering his way through the traffic in the late stages of the contest to come away with the National Open title at Lindy.
Deisley won over $2,000 for a micro sprint feature at a quarter-mile track.
There he is getting a little ride with his crew. Now let's go to the West Virginia Motor Speedway. This race, a Thunder in the Mountains 100, set up as an alternative to the Pennsboro Dirt Track World Championship, which was canceled for questionable reasons.
It's promoted by Rick Gross of Stars, the Stars president, and it became a race where over 80 cars came to it, and it filled in perfectly for Pennsboro.
Capacity crowd watching in the grandstands as the best in dirt late model racing duked it out. Bart Hartman in the number 75 on the point.
The Ohio driver, he dominated the race. There wasn't anybody that could touch him. He stayed right on the inside of the track and won on the big 5/8 mile track.
Bart Hartman collects some thunder in the Virginia mountains and some money to go with it. How about 25,000 big ones, Bart? All right, let's go to Flemington for the Challenge of Champions weekend. And look out, Phil Cox coming in your living room. Ooh, that's looking pretty nasty.
Cars don't usually flip on the asphalt anymore at Flemington, but he got in there and rolls it over, rips up the entire side.
And manages to walk away after taking out a whole bunch of real estate.
Here's the beginning of the Flemington Challenge of Champions 250. Mike Stefanik was obviously the pre-race favorite. He goes into the lead at the start.
Passing Jamie the Jet Tomato early on. Some other drivers, though, were factoring in. John Blewett, driving his car numbered as 1 for the day, took the lead from Stefanik, but then his car failed.
It was a disappointing day for Blewett.
That brought Eddie Flemke up to challenge Stefanik for the lead. Flemke in the 79 gets by Stefanik, and then Stefanik tries to come back around and does, but then Flemke gives him a little give-and-go action coming around one of the corners on the speedway. Flemke goes back up front, Stefanik is left to battle, and then Richie Ruggiero goes around Flemke.
It was wild action. This is all in the last 25 laps of the race, as Flemke goes back by Ruggiero for the lead.
Flemke working the outside of Ruggiero, gets the top spot. Stefanik closes back in, passes him for the lead through turns 1 and 2.
Stefanik didn't let that hit from Flemke mess him up a little bit, but then actually, a couple laps later, Flemke gets back into the action, wanted to win this race.
So Flemke comes up behind Stefanik, and it's almost a dead solid repeat. Little tap, Stefanik gets loose, Flemke gets by. Flemke goes on to collect the victory in the Challenge of Champions 250 and got a rather lukewarm reception at Victory Lane.
Flemke said he wanted to win, though. He had a very good friend who was sick at home.
The National Open for Sprints at Williams Grove. Rain fell when the Outlaws were in town. This event was almost postponed until next year, but instead Williams Grove officials decided to run this race sans an Outlaws sanction.
The money to win was pulled back to $12,000, but Pouch didn't mind that. He goes after it.
Billy the Kid Pouch doing it to it, working through turns 1 and 2, narrowly avoiding the Ed Lynch car that had just gotten inside out.
That was the closest call for Pouch, who was able to hold off Fred Raymer in the last laps.
Pouch goes on to collect the $12,000 payday. And how did he feel down in Victory Lane?
How's it feel, buddy?
It feels great.
The battles for the Mr. Dirt Small Block and Big Block Modified titles have pretty much been decided before the final dirt sanctioned event of the year at the Orange County Fair Speedway in Middletown. But hey, it's the CarQuest 150, and to win in Middletown is enough to go and have yourself one whale of a fight. There's Pete Bignell, the number 42, sneaking around in the pit area. Danny Johnson bounces off the inside wall, and that leaves the door open, Kevin, for Kenny Tremont.
Tremont running his TO Pro car. He wins this race for the second year in a row.
Doing a little battle here with Danny behind traffic in turn number 2. The win was especially a good one for Tremont after the crushing disappointment of almost winning the Eckerd 300 just a couple of weeks earlier, only to run out of gas just a lap or two from the finish.
$7,500 it was for Tremont, also his 150th career victory.
So a couple of different things for Kenny Tremont to celebrate as he made some bacon at Middleton. On to the Eastern States CarQuest 200 itself.
It was Billy Decker and Doug Hoffman battling for the lead as the race wound down.
The track was very dry and very slick, one lane on the bottom.
He didn't want to get off there, but Brett Hearn did. He was in the pits.
A disappointing end to the season for Brett the Jet and the Budweiser Racing Team. On the racetrack, though, things were really starting to heat up major. In heavy traffic, Decker trying to stay on the bottom, working with Pat Ward, Doug Hoffman breathing down his neck, Jimmy Horton closing in rapidly. This is what it looks like when you're playing bumper tag in a dirt modified.
Decker made the smart move, stayed to the inside of the track, even in lap traffic, because Doug, he knew they could not get a bite on the outside.
Hoffman did try, and Jimmy Horton tried really hard. Now watch Horton bonsais in on the top, finds something on the top lane of the racetrack. And as they work through turn number 2, Horton is actually leading this race for the briefest of moments. But then a sideways slower car in front of him forces him to check up. Decker's able to stave off the challenges as they work into turns 3 and 4.
There just wasn't anything up there for Horton to grab hold of.
Decker wound up ending his season with a win.
This dirt series got a lot of really good guys on it that have paid their dues, that have worked really hard over the years and got super programs, and I'm just happy to be one of them now.
Look, it's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. No, wait, no, don't do it, don't jump. Okay, maybe it's not the Great Pumpkin. This is probably one of the most bizarre events you're ever going to see in Northeastern Racing, the annual Halloween Howler at the Star Speedway. When's the last time we saw a hearse puke out its contents?
It's a 4-cylinder Enduro. The car's going almost all the way around the entire racetrack.
And it goes from a dead solid Formula One style start, and then literally all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, drivers in costumes for Halloween. There's cars dressed up. There's everything you can imagine.
If this is not essentially so much about racing as it is maybe about surviving, as you can see. And you know what? Just because they're Enduro cars and they're not going that fast, that doesn't mean that they can't get crashed up, bashed up, smashed up, and even flip once in a while. Hello. Ouch.
He was uninjured in that accident.
And here comes our happy winner driving a Volkswagen. Can you say Farfig-Nugan?
Nice driver's suit for him, too.
Hagerstown Speedway's Oktoberfest wound up running in November because of the rain.
But Mike Romano in the 97, he didn't mind the wait. He came back. He made the 6-hour haul from New York. It was the fastest car on the track.
Billy Pouch in the 704 tried to keep pace with Romano, but wound up running the tires off the Trenton Mac machine and wound up going into the pit area for tire stops not once but twice during the course of this feature event.
Pouch actually put on the wrong set of tires at the beginning of the race, and that was his doom.
Jamie Mills in the number 30 car did give Romano some fits in the second half of the race, actually taking the point from Romano on a couple of occasions.
But Mills, he lost his tires. This is an open tire rule. There's no spec tire involved at Hagerstown, and Mills just didn't have any left at the end of the race.
Kenny Pettyjohn and Wade Hendrickson about to have a conference through turns 3 and 4.
Romano didn't get involved in any of this, and he easily stepped away to the victory. $10,000, his first Oktoberfest win.
Well, I'll tell you, we had a good car, but I got to take the time to thank Nathan Durbro. I really don't know him that well, and we got ready to go out for the feature, and the sun was going in and out, and tires are a big factor here. And I asked him what to do, and he told me the straight scoop, and I'll tell you what, the tire choice won the race for us, and I owe it to him.
Late models also on the bill for the Oktoberfest at Hagerstown.
Chuck Frank in the 1 star, they call him the shoestring traveler from Western Pennsylvania, and he was very much going after that big dollars today.
Working down to the inside, trying to take the lead in the early going of this late model portion. There were some other heavy hitters in this field, though. Rick Eckerd is in the 24 that's got the white trim on the side going around the outside there while he gets the lead. Chuck Frank deals with the slower car by getting it out of his way the hard way.
This becomes a battle for the lead a little bit later. Chuck Frank goes right in between 3 wide, Rick Eckerd and Rick Workman, and comes out of turn 2, left front raised up in the air, takes the top spot, and that's it.
Frank working around turns 3 and 4. All Edgar could do was look at him ahead of him as Chubb gets the win. Now the Delaware State Championships, and buckle your seatbelts, folks, because Richard White and his partner are about to do a dynamic duo flip-flop and fly.
This is in the street modified action, and you ever seen a car get that high?
I haven't. Somebody get a measuring stick out on that. How high was that? Let's look at this again.
On the replay, they believe it was 14 feet high, that Richard White's car. That's the one that's against the wall. He's climbing out right there, uninjured. Both drivers were uninjured.
Now look at this again. One of the most bizarre incidences I can tell you I've seen in my years. Folks, that's what a car 14 feet in the air looks like.
This wasn't Talladega or Daytona either. That's what it looks like, but it wasn't.
And the fence did its job holding up when the car came back down. Small blocks and big block modifieds on the bill as part of the Delaware State Championships. And this weekend turned out to be Craig Von Doren benefit.
Closed the season in a big way. He had won the week before in a small block race at Hagerstown. He takes another small block race at Delaware. 50 lapper, 1,700 to win. That gives him 16 wins on the year.
The late models on the bill as well, and Gary Stuhler, who campaigns at Hagerstown in Maryland, working to the inside of Les Hare's machine off turn number 2. Stuhler says see ya, and he pockets the late model goal. Big block modifieds ready to take to the racetrack. Von Doren starts right up in front with Jamie Mills as his dancing partner. And in the back of the field, there's a little bumping and grinding going on as everybody looks for racing room. There's the 27 of Ricky Elliott working his way into turns 1 and 2. Kenny Brightville gets turned around, and a couple other campaigners. Bobby Wilkins amongst them, and the number 94 get caught on the outside of the racetrack.
But Von Doren avoided it all and easily went around on the slick afternoon racetrack to take the win.
The last major outdoor event of the year is always the Turkey Derby. Gobble, gobble, gobble at Wall Stadium. TQ midget action, Keith Dempster does the slide for life on his head, no less.
Scraped up the car a little bit. He came back out in the race, ran without a win.
Ken Lorenz, one of the Can-Am TQ cars from the Western New York area, got the win. The triple 50s for the modifieds at Wall are the headliner of the Turkey Derby.
The first race went to that number 62. That's Jim Willis, who holds on for the victory.
In the second race, Willis, starting outside the front row, tries to jump up on the point again.
But his problem's right at the beginning. Slides up high, he goes out of contention. He finishes next to last in the feature.
And because the Turkey Derby is formatted that the overall winner is the person who has the 3 best finishes on the day, he was knocked out of the overall as well.
Here's Bobby Walton, who would win the third race. He slides through the infield in the second.
Coming around, checkered flag over the number 11 machine in race number 2.
That goes to Dan McLaughlin.
And now the third and final leg of the Turkey Derby itself.
This would be the race that would decide the Turkey Derby champion, and Dan McLaughlin, the winner of the second race, took himself out of contention right at the beginning. Tim Airy gets hit with number 66 in the aftermath.
Airy tries to keep on rolling. Trouble for your first race winner, Willis, in the number 62.
And that's the 3 of Sam Russo took a wild spinning crash on the home stretch. And the restart of this was the pivotal moment of the whole day. Dave Garfinkel and Dave Michael hit some moisture on the inside of turn 2 in a 21 and a 60, and they spin on the outside of turn 2. Here they are sitting there.
As a matter of fact, one of these drivers, Garfinkel, was knocked out of the race. Michael was able to finish in the top 5.
Bobby Walton goes on to win the race, and afterwards they determined that Dave Garfinkel and Dave Michael were tied for the Turkey Derby championship, and they both wore the wreaths in victory lane.
Time for some bonus coverage of the QMA Eastern Grands at the Little Wall Stadium, and Kyle Franklin going for the major flyer. He's over the wall.
He was all right after that. Here's another angle of it.
In a quarter midget, no less. I mean, look at this. He's out of the ballpark.
He came back and finished second in that race. And right here, this is Danny Sammons, a former Eastern Grands winner, hits the wall in one of his last quarter midget races.
Always tight action in these little 20th mile racetracks that the QMA cars run on.
And this is a dead heat finish between J.J. Jensen and Michael Wasilowski.
Coming across for the win. Unbelievable. Let's run down our list of top Northeast winners for the season. First up in the Dirt Big Block Modified category, Western PA runner Brian Swartzlander with 25.
It was a career year for Swartzlander, who drove a former Mike Romano Bicknell built car.
Dirt Small Block Modified top getter was Craig Von Doren, 16 wins.
It was the second straight year that Von Doren topped the Small Block Modified division.
In the sprint category, Fast Freddie Raymer, 33 times in victory lane.
He also was the overall Northeast leading feature winner, which got him a trip from World Travel and Area Auto Racing News to Jamaica.
Top asphalt late model winner Billy Whitaker, a youngster not even 25 yet.
He's a rising star out of Central New York.
Top winner in the dirt late model category, Gary Stuhler, who made the trip 17 times.
He won 20 races to lead the dirt late models last year, but this year he won more stars with late model sanctioned events.
And in the asphalt modified category, a tie between a pair of New Englanders, Featherlight Tour and Busch North Series champion Mike Stefanik, and SK modified runner Ted Christopher, who each had 13 victories. We'd like to thank all of our contributing video editors. For Kevin Kovac, I'm Cowboy Paul Small. Mom, come get us. We're done. Thanks for joining us.